Okay. For people who don't know, this is prolific Substack writer, Twitter poster.
Yes.
Michael Tracey.
Impressive title, right? Just a poster.
Just a poster. Well, posters are a big deal now.
Hey, yeah.
The internet has become real life, right?
If you can't post, then you ain't. Can we curse?
Yeah.
You ain't shit.
There you go.
I shouldn't have even asked if we can curse. Of course, that's understood.
Why would you say of course? You just assume that.
Well, I don't know. I seem to recall you dropping epithets
Nope.
on occasion. You don't?
Not like that.
Okay.
Those are all AI generated.
Okay.
Okay. What are we talking about? What's
I
going
don't
on?
know anything. So, okay, I'm sort of curious. So, we did a remote stream. I think it was in 2022.
Okay. Was this about like whether or not something counted as a tank?
No,
remember
that's
this
a
discourse on Twitter.
meme that people still remember that they use against me as though
Okay.
I didn't, because it was a whole nomenclatural thing,
Okay.
a semantic thing around
Gotcha.
the provision of heavy armored vehicles to Ukraine by Biden, and did those count as a tank? It's not even really worth going over. But yeah,
Okay.
there's a segment of my trolls who are still fixated on that.
Gotcha.
But it was about something to do with Ukraine because that creature Vaush did a whole. He invited me out for a whole debate, and he ended up screaming at me and saying I loved Hitler and saying that I'm evil and don't believe anything I say.
Okay.
And then I guess you were told about this Vaush encounter by your followers, and then you invited me on.
Okay.
But one thing I found amazing, because it was like I thought it was a pretty constructive conversation. I don't know if you recall it, but then afterwards, I realized that you were playing video games the whole time, and I was just amazed.
Well,
I mean, it's cool, I guess. I just had no notion that that's what you were doing.
Oh.
The whole time. So do you still do that?
Not anymore.
Okay.
But I have. I'm on Vyvanse now, so
Okay.
I can
There you
focus
go.
better. But before, I would just need something occupying my hands to do something or
I
whatever.
gotcha.
But
I was just
yeah.
because we went like 3 hours, and I'm like, and then people were telling me afterwards, "Hey, he was just playing a game the whole time," and it was just sort of funny to not even realize what was going on in real time.
Do you play games at all, or?
I play video games, but I kind of compartmentalize my video games so I'm not multitasking while I'm playing them.
Sure, I know. I
I
understand
just
that.
play console single player games on occasion. I don't even want to incorporate any kind of social element to it.
Yeah, that makes sense. Hey, Doug Festney, thank you for gifting subs. But generally, whatever game I'm playing is a game I've played a ton before. So even though I'm playing while chatting, I'm really just having a conversation, and I'm probably just like kind of automated,
It's kind of
like
like
jumping
occupying
through.
your hands,
Yeah, because
or
it's
it's
probably
just sort of like this auditory stimuli that you need to. That's not really mentally intensive.
basically something like that. Yeah.
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 Do you play?
Somebody donated something.
Oh, okay.
It shows that back there. Don't worry about
I thought maybe they were onto us.
it. Yeah.
Do you play console games?
Not as much anymore.
Okay.
I grew up playing console games, but then I think once you transition to doing PC heavy stuff, and then as
Yeah.
of recently, like a lot of console stuff releases for PC anyway. So
I never really transitioned to the console heavy thing. Like I didn't have a video game console for like 10 years. And then
do you mind
somebody,
me asking how old are you?
37?
Okay. Me
How old
too.
are you?
37.
Oh, there you
December
go.
88.
I'm August 88.
Okay, cool. Okay, so older than
I
me.
guess that makes
older
us,
and wiser
I guess
a little
that
bit, right?
bonds us in some way.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah, I'm 3 months older and wiser than you.
Yeah. Okay.
I didn't have a console for like 10 years, right?
Okay.
Because when I was an adolescent, that's my number one activity was just playing video games, Xbox, whatever.
Wait, you didn't have a console? You didn't have a PC?
I didn't have any consoles, and then I had a computer always, but none that was really set up for game.
Wait, how did you play games all the time if you didn't have a
I
console?
didn't play any really for 10 years.
Oh, you didn't play for 10 years. Okay, sorry, gotcha.
And
okay.
then somebody who I won't name convinced me to get a Switch, ostensibly just so we could play some casual Mario Kart. But then, of course, I couldn't control myself, and it branched out within like a matter of weeks to me getting like this entire Switch back catalog that I missed, and then a PS5. So I basically spent like a month playing like the best games from the prior 10 years that I had missed.
Okay.
I mean, it was awesome. Like, I hadn't played Uncharted, I hadn't played Red Dead Redemption 2, I hadn't played Mario Odyssey, I hadn't played Breath of the Wild, but I wasn't very productive during that month.
Yeah, you got to be careful.
But recently I can moderate. So I haven't really played anything since January, where I kind of did like the first third of Tears of the Kingdom.
Which is that a Zelda game?
Yeah, it's like the sequel basically to Breath of the Wild.
Okay, gotcha.
But prior to that, I played Donkey Kong Bonanza on Switch. Have you played that? Do you have a Switch too?
No. My last console was like.
Are you a gamer or not? I thought this was
PC
like a
gamer. PC gamer.
Okay.
PC gamer.
I thought this was like fundamentally a gaming sort of stream
Well, no,
operation
now it's fundamentally
that extended into political stuff.
It did. It extended back in 2016. So now we're mainly political with a little bit of gaming.
Okay,
I used to be a
okay.
professional StarCraft 2 player, but now we do mainly horrible
Oh,
politics.
really?
And
Okay,
yeah.
so yeah, that's a different stratosphere than I ever was. I played competitive like Worms Armageddon for a bit.
I like Worms. I remember Worms. Yep.
Worms was good. But Donkey Kong Bonanza was great, and then Astrobot on the PS5 was great. It's like basically the first time that Sony came up with a Mario equivalent.
Okay.
But other than that, like, there's not a whole lot that really...
I would argue thing like Rayman and Spyro the Dragon were more
Arguably.
Okay.
I mean, in recent years anyway.
In recent years, yeah.
And it's the first one that made use of the like computing power of the PS5.
Okay.
But Astrobot was phenomenal. Donkey Kong Bonanza was great, but like there's nothing really other than that that's come out recently that I'm even that interested in. So I'm sort of like forced to moderate my video game usage anyway.
Okay. Cool.
Does anybody care about that, or like does anybody care about?
It's
my
good
video game
background. It helps
history?
us make an emotional connection to you as a speaker. So.
It can, yeah, it can. So you never played like Red Dead Redemption 2 and stuff, or?
I've played games in that vein. I didn't play that one exactly, but like I played like The Witcher 3 and The Last of Us and what like these
I
types
played The
of
Last
games.
of Us,
and,
yeah, and The Last of Us 2. But Red Dead Redemption 2 is like a landmark in just pop culture.
Yeah, a lot of people liked it. Big
It's like
game.
the best-selling entertainment product of all time, or something.
Well, that's probably GTA 5 or Minecraft or Roblox, but.
Well, maybe it was like the
It was a
fastest
really big.
selling.
It was a really big one.
There was
yeah.
there was some metric by which it was the most commercially successful something or other.
With a horse in it, I think. With a horse and tuberculosis, but it was a slim category. No, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so what is?
So why am I in Miami?
Yeah. What did you do before? Who were you talking to?
So I told you on the elevator ride up that I don't often reach out, quote unquote, to anybody with any kind of media platform to appear on their platform. But I had recalled that you were in Miami somewhere. I was coming to Miami anyway, so I figured, what the heck? Let me reach out to Destiny.
Okay.
Because that could be funny.
You can call me Steven in real life.
Steven?
And funny. Okay, so there's a joke to you. Gotcha.
Wait, so real IRL people don't call you Destiny?
No.
Damn. I thought you kept the illusion going like it was a WWF gimmick, like The Undertaker. He would go out in public, and he wouldn't be The Undertaker per se, but he would kind of have like almost the aura of The Undertaker about him because they didn't want to break the gimmick.
Nope. But I'm an asshole when I'm Steven too, so I'm like the same person, just with a different name.
Okay.
You know?
So I was
my pro gaming background was I was Neo Destiny or Destiny, so I just kept the name for all my brand and everything. So that's why. But
okay, that's cool. I mean, hey, it's a brand, right?
Yeah.
My brand is just my name. Like, I mean, that's not cool.
Yeah.
So I got invited to come on to appear on a show. I didn't actually even know what I was agreeing to do. I just know that I was invited to come down to Miami, and it was under the auspices of talking to the guy who was probably most responsible for popularizing Pizzagate.
Okay.
In 2016.
What was his name?
Ben Swan.
Do I know this guy?
He was a local TV reporter at the same time, TV anchor for like maybe a CBS affiliate in Atlanta, and he did a segment on Pizzagate. I think it was in January of 2017. So maybe he wasn't most responsible, but he was the guy in the sort of traditional media who actually covered Pizzagate, quote unquote, if you could call it that.
Gotcha. Did this guy have the Trump golden shoes? I don't know if I debated this guy or not. No, I don't think I have. Okay, go ahead.
So anyway, more recently, after the latest production of Epstein Files, he's been on like a victory tour saying, Pizzagate is vindicated, Pizzagate is true, Jeffrey Epstein is Pizzagate. I could never quite tell what his argument exactly was in terms of how the Epstein Files vindicated Pizzagate or proved Pizzagate is true, because my understanding was that there were never any child sex slaves found at the Comet Pizza restaurant, Comet Ping Pong Pizza restaurant.
Yeah, well, I mean, there wasn't even a basement that the place had, and supposedly it was in the basement where the CP orders. Yeah.
Whether there was a basement or not, I think the more relevant factor is like whether there are actually any child sex slaves.
Well, the basement is an important part. How are you going to have sex slaves on the first floor when everybody just looking at the windows, you know?
People seem to focus a lot on whether or not there was a basement. I mean, in whatever floor of the dwelling we're talking about, had child sex slaves been discovered there, like that would probably be the most relevant investigatory finding.
Sure, I guess.
And there weren't any, and yet like there's still like this demographic of the internet that is very invested in declaring that Pizzagate was true. So I figured we'd probably be talking about that when he invited me. I just accepted it because, I hadn't traveled in maybe two or 3 months, so I figured why the hell not? And they spirited me out to this like cavernous studio somewhere on the outskirts of Miami.
Okay.
And we did it on Thursday, and it was a pretty cordial discussion. It started out with a lot of Iran and Trump stuff, and then like the second half was kind of Pizzagate / Epstein, and he kind of like agreed with me. Like he ended up basically agreeing with me, or at least claiming that he agreed with me, which is sort of interesting because he's one of the last guys you would ever expect to concede anything in that vein, because his whole sort of identity is wrapped up with having been the guy who was trying to blow the whistle on Pizzagate.
Yeah.
And all these years later, he's finally vindicated by the Epstein files. And yet, hey, I mean, nice enough guy. I mean, I don't really know what the business operation is going there. Like, I know he did register in 2022 under FARA with the Department of Justice because he was producing content on behalf of some Russian outfit.
Okay. Props to him for disclosing.
Yeah,
and not taking money secretly.
He disclosed it. Yeah, I mean, so
this is basically all podcasts today are when people go on these types of shows, the conversations have to be friendly and there's no adversarial stuff.
Yeah.
So like you can be a guy who thinks that the earth is round and they can be a flat earther, and you can come on and say something like, well, we've done a lot of tests and it's proven that the earth is round. And they're like, yeah, I think I've heard of those. Yeah. So what do you think about like the firmament? You're like, well, I think the firmament is completely and totally fake. And the guy will be like, yeah, that's okay. Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah, I kind of agree. Yeah, I think it's real, but I kind of agree with you. And it's just like that for 4 hours.
That's the Joe Rogan sensibility,
yes,
right?
But that's everybody now. Everybody does this.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, everybody emulates Joe Rogan. He's the big kahuna, right? Whether or not they're conscious of it. I mean, they're
very conscious of it.
Some may be, some may not be. If you're just kind of absorbing what the prevailing kind of ethos is of podcast culture, then what you're absorbing is fundamentally something that originates with Joe Rogan.
Sure, yeah. When I say those people are conscious of it, what I mean is that like they explicitly go out of their way to avoid critical conversations, and they explicitly invite people that they know are going to play ball and be nice and have those types of conversations. Yeah.
But Joe Rogan, I mean, you sit him in front of virtually anybody for 2.5 or 3 hours, he'll end up at least kind of in spirit agreeing with them.
Yeah,
I think which can be good in terms of just a casual conversation if you're not trying to do anything adversarial. Like if you're just chatting with somebody. Like I know when I do journalistic type interviews and I'm just trying to like understand what people's beliefs are or what they think about a certain issue, it's just like an ordinary person. I'm not necessarily going to be probing them in this interrogative way as if I'm interviewing a politician.
Sure.
But if you are interviewing a politician, then maybe your mindset should shift a little bit. Like when Joe Rogan had Trump for 3 hours, like a week before the election in 2024, and it ended just being this chummy gab fest. Like that was a threshold crossing event for me in terms of the ire with which the ire that I plan on now directing at the podcast class.
Yeah.
Because that did a disservice to the entire country.
I mean, I would agree, but yeah, I don't think that's by accident. I think that's by design. I think they know what's going on there, because if they had other motivations, you would expect to see them acting differently.
Who's them? Who's
like the people in
this?
in the podcast class. Like they know that there are certain opinions that they can talk about, that there are certain people that they can bring on to echo those opinions that vibe well with their audience. And they know to bring those people on to do those types of podcasts and give those types of messages and then get those types of clicks and views and then make the money on that stuff. And then that's like that at the end of the day, that's where they're going to be,
Yeah. I mean, I think that probably is the case, meaning a by design philosophy for people who are lower on the food chain than Joe Rogan. But at this point, Joe Rogan's like a Johnny Carson. Like he can have basically anybody that he wants on the podcast.
But who does he invite on?
Well,
it's the same ideologically backed people over and over. How many? Like,
I believe that. I believe
Constantine just went on. They've been on like 6 times.
Yeah.
It was the 7th time. It's not like they're short of guests. They just had. Do you know who Andrew Wilson and Rachel Wilson are? These people are crazy out there conservatives. Like Rachel Wilson has written a book on like satanic like ownership of children. Like they're crazy people, but he just had both of them on.
That's big right now on the podcast circuit. Satanic
kind of stuff. Yeah, but like it's
stuff.
just because they're kind of right wing and they'll reinforce those views and like that's it. It's just that over and over again. Did you follow the big debate between is it Graham Hitchcock and Flint Dibble?
I did end up watching some of that, even
like
though
Rogan sided with the guy who believes that we're this close to finding Atlantis. Like that's who Rogan sided with. I don't think
Flint
that's an accident.
Dibble was more of like an actually reputable archaeologist or something.
Yes, absolutely.
Or paleontologist.
100%. Yeah, it's not even close.
I wasn't really invested in that debate. It was just sort of interesting that was being hosted by Rogan and like people really were passionate about it. So I was just kind of like a bystander to it.
Yeah. But I mean, like, it's not like a coincidence that, especially in today's political climate, I don't know if you've noticed this yet, but if you give me like one belief of a person, I can probably predict like 12 other beliefs just by you telling me a thing.
They cluster together.
Yeah, super clustered.
But and with Rogan, I mean, I believe that he would have actually had Kamala Harris on the podcast if it came together, right? In
no shot. What you just said doesn't even make sense. If it came together, right? I think that if you really wanted to talk to the Democratic nominee, the person who at the time, if you're being good faith, like it was never a hopeless race for her, right? Like it could have been anywhere from slightly favored to slightly disfavored, but no sane person was like, oh, she's never going to win, right? If you knew that you had an opportunity to interview this person, you would move heaven and earth to do so, 100%. There's no world where like, it didn't work out that I couldn't interview the vice president of the United States, a potential future president of the United States.
Yeah. On the other hand, you could see it being like a bit of a power move, meaning you have to come to him, which is what Trump did, and that's what J.D. Vance did. And Kamala,
I think they flexed to make that work.
They couldn't work it out logistically.
But wait,
so
that wasn't
Joe
true. Though.
Like, okay, whatever.
Didn't they move or travel to do the Trump show? Did Trump go to Austin for it?
I'm almost positive, and you can look it up. I'm almost positive that Trump went to the studio in Austin.
I feel like they tried to make accommodation somehow. I don't know if it was by the day or something else, because I felt like for Kamala, I thought that they had the opportunity because Kamala was doing something in, I want to say Dallas or Houston, but Joe Rogan said that they had like,
it was in Houston.
I wish I could remember. Yeah. And Joe Rogan
but
and them.
Kamala's people wanted Joe Rogan to come to Houston,
but
if
I think
memory serves.
I feel like they were willing to go to Austin, but Joe said like he had a baseball game or something. It was something really stupid to do something. Or it could have happened
UFC
if they wanted to do
something.
I would have to go back and look up the details, but that's just one of those things where it's kind of like if you're texting somebody and they never respond and they're like, well, I'm busy. It's like, well, if you cared, I think you'd probably just respond.
But Joe Rogan, he'll occasionally have on like Bernie Sanders. He had John Fetterman on.
Okay, stop.
What?
Yes. But like, there's a difference. You hear people say this. Sorry,
you're making me defend.
You're triggering me. Wait, I just need to say this.
Go ahead.
Right? You've met these people. Actually, I don't even know where your political leanings are. But like, there are these people who are like, oh no, I talk to people on the right and left. Oh, who do you talk to on the right? Everybody. Who do you talk to on the left? Oh, so many left-leaning people. They would say before. Now it's a little bit. They'd say like, I talked to RFK Jr. I talked to Tulsi Gabbard.
Sure.
Now it's John Fetterman and Ro Khanna and maybe Bernie Sanders. It's like, okay, so you're talking to like the most outer perimeter fringe kind of like left-leaning people, but like you're never gonna have like an establishment like AOC type or.
So you think he wouldn't have Gavin Newsom on?
I
think he would. I mean, I think
Am I wrong? Wait, wasn't Gavin
challenging
him to go on? Am I making this up? Didn't Gavin tweet out saying that like let me on your podcast, and Joe Rogan was saying no? I think.
Yeah, I think I remember something like that. You might be right.
Mm-hmm. So like that's by design, right?
I would be shocked if that doesn't happen eventually, though.
If it doesn't happen eventually, I don't think it will, because I think Joe needs to be in the hug box.
Yeah.
Which is sad, I think.
You start with Joe Rogan.
He wants
to be president so bad. The governor of the most populous state and the host of one of the most popular podcasts are feuding.
This is Gavin Newsom.
California Governor Gavin Newsom, who hosts his own podcast, has invited Joe Rogan onto his show and publicly asked to be invited onto Rogan's show. Joe, why won't you have me on the show? He won't have me. It's one way, and he has guests come.
That's crazy, right?
Look, like Sean Ryan's, he's another sort of right-wing podcaster guy. He had
nice.
Gavin on.
True. He did, yeah.
For 4 hours. Holy crap.
Because I think Gavin will go anywhere, right?
Yeah.
But Joe Rogan is a pussy-ass bitch. He won't. He will not talk to people that have substantial disagreements with him.
Yeah, I mean, you might be right on some level. Again, I'm genuinely not even trying to. I'm very antagonistic toward Joe Rogan at this point, just because, like it or not, people view him as an authoritative source of news.
I know, unfortunately.
And then this whole little deflection pivot where I'm just a comedian, bro. I'm a dummy. Nobody should take me seriously. Meanwhile, like for the whole month of February into March, he was just blasting out the most preposterous Epstein files revelations that Jamie was sending over to him based on whatever had risen to the top of the algorithmic slop heap that day and presenting it as like credible, proven information to millions of people. And, it's kind of, I don't want to get too melodramatic about it, but like it is dangerous in the sense that if he's telling this mass audience, right, the biggest audience on the internet, that as he did, like maybe it was February 15th or something like that, that these prophecies that have come from Whitney Webb, I don't know if you know who that is,
No.
I don't know. I won't even
You
try to
said
explain.
prophecy, so I'll assume she's a crazy person, yeah?
She's crazy enough, but she's seen as this very reputable person in terms of like the conspiracy adjacent journalism world, to the degree that exists.
Okay.
But Joe Rogan was saying, man, this Whitney Webb chick, she's been proven 100% right. How does she do it?
Oh.
Because they pulled up this tweet of hers from April of 2020 that went newly viral after the Epstein files came out, where Whitney Webb is like, how is it that Leslie Wexner got away with trafficking and financing the trafficking and raping of thousands of American children? And it's been covered up. So Joe Rogan is now resurfacing this tweet from 6 years ago, or 7 years ago. No, 6 years ago? My arithmetic is off. As if to say that like this woman who was a prophet, like shouting into the darkness 6 years ago, has now been proven dramatically correct. If that's the message that you're telling to millions upon millions of people who are impressionable, and who are looking at you as a kind of authoritative news disseminator, then there's going to be a subset of those people who have probably some predisposition toward mental instability and think that maybe now it's incumbent upon them to take retributive action. And there was a guy, I'm not blaming Joe Rogan personally for this, or saying he's causally responsible.
He is, go ahead.
But, like not long thereafter, there was a 21-year-old guy who became newly obsessed with the Epstein files and tried to launch an armed incursion into Mar-a-Lago and got shot dead. So, I mean, that's kind of what you're incubating out there. And Joe Rogan is at the top of the pyramid in terms of what our contemporary information environment is revolving around. So
yeah,
that's my big problem with Joe Rogan. And then just like a few days ago, somebody, because people like try to rile me up and send me these clips, and then I have no self-control, so I look at them. But he was saying, oh yeah, Netanyahu, Joe Rogan was saying that he thinks that Netanyahu is dead.
Oh, yeah.
Because that was like a thing in the past couple days on social media.
Because there was like a thing where his hand looked like this or something, and people were like, where is his thumb? Or why does he have like 5 fingers? Or it's AI or something. And it was just like,
and Joe Rogan was saying to this other comedian guy he had on, look, we know that Netanyahu's brother was just killed in an airstrike. So, it stands to reason that Bibi himself is also dead. And Joe Rogan was literally basing his statement of fact on a bogus viral tweet that had just proclaimed Netanyahu's brother had died in an airstrike based on a viral, image that had gone around of a house fire in New Jersey. And that's what Joe Rogan just looks at and like believes without like any second guessing whatsoever, and then blasts out to the biggest audience on the internet.
I mean, do you remember the whole kitty litter fiasco?
That
was where Rogan, I don't even remember if he saw this on a Facebook posting or somebody emailed him or whatever, but somebody said, and it was totally made up. It came out that this was totally made up, but he started this whole national panic where somebody was like, they're putting kitty litter boxes in classrooms now for kids that identify as furries.
Yes.
And it was just completely not true. And this would like captured the Republican public thought for probably a month or so. And it eventually came out it was all just bullshit. It was just a lie. But I mean, it was obviously a lie. But it's just like the fact that these people are so hungry for these things, and it tells you something about the person, and it should tell them something about themselves that they fall for it so easily, where they should think like, okay, well, if I fell for this and this and this and this and this and this and this, maybe I need to change the way that I'm approaching something or create some type of new mental guard to not fall into this. Never, no. Which
He's
is
like
why
incorrigible.
Yes.
You think at some point he would feel some public spirited obligation, right? Just given his reach, given the enormity of his influence, to have like a thought that's percolating around in his brain somewhere that before he just blasts out this info that's like not just about something about comedy or something inconsequential, some casual little piece of banter or gossip, but like something that's directly pertaining to ongoing, very significant news events like a war, or an election, or like a alleged child rape atrocity, that like maybe he would do like a second or two of confirmatory research, but he just doesn't do it.
Yeah.
And at a certain point, like it's not funny anymore.
Yeah, we are way past that point. Yeah. But I mean, like the way that I look at it is I just look at where all the incentives are, right? Like when he does these things, you get a ton of positive feedback. You make a lot of money. You retain your viewer base. Like everything is just going really well for you. Imagine if there was some story that came out about Kamala or Biden that was negative, or about Trump that was positive, and you had an inkling that it wasn't real. What, besides personal integrity, of which Joe Rogan has none of, why would you stop that story? There's no accountability. Nobody's suing anybody for defamation. Your audience obviously doesn't care.
There's no disincentive.
Yeah, exactly. So they just follow kind of the tide on that. And
if anything, it made him the most coveted political endorsement in the entire country in 2024.
Yep.
So
In a
why
way,
would he change what he's doing?
Exactly. Yeah, which is very, very, very annoying. Yeah.
Can I ask? So, like, what is your? How often do you stream? Do you stream every day?
I'm supposed to stream 8 hours a day. I try to. Yeah.
And do you ever take days off or anything, or?
I mean, I travel for events, so like I'm going out of town tomorrow to go to ASU, so that'll be like 2 or 3 days off streaming.
But if you're just home,
I'm always doing emails or where I'm generally always working.
You wouldn't take a day off from the streaming.
If I do, it's because I have to catch up on other stuff. Yeah.
Okay, interesting. And how do you think that? I'm distracted by that concept.
Good. That's what it's here for me to gain a psychological edge.
It's to throw off the weirdos who come to your apartment
Exactly.
and want to sit in front of this very impressive setup that I have no technical ability to construct on my own, definitely. How do you think that the constant streaming and the constant almost public exposure, maybe exposure is a little bit of an overstatement or a little bit of a kind of serious way of putting it, but like constantly being in public view for so long, day after day, do you think there are any downsides to that, just in terms of your ability to think, like to almost have private thoughts that you can come up with in the sanctity of your own mind and not necessarily have an audience of people scrutinizing like every little gradation in your thought process? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, I think there can be. I think it just depends on the type. I think for most people there probably is. I think I'm pretty lucky in that I started streaming early. I built a fan base doing StarCraft, and then I transitioned into politics still like pretty early on, the whole kind of streaming era. Like I was the first person on Twitch to really do politics at all.
Oh,
so,
really?
Yeah.
Like when was that roughly? Like what year?
Would have been around 2016. They used to ban my streams early on for a day because you weren't technically allowed to do non-gaming content
when
initially.
Did Hassan start?
He got his start on my stream on 2017. Yeah, it's my worst contribution to the world.
I met him at the Young Turks facility in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
And I didn't even know who he was. He was just introduced to me as like a relative of Cenk. I didn't know he was going to become this big behemoth.
Yeah.
I have like people who are like, I had a cousin of mine tell me that basically all my cousin knew of what I had done, quote unquote, professionally, is that I had been on like Hassan's stream at one point, or I had been referenced by him. So, I mean, he seems to like be a big presence, right?
Yeah, he's like a leftist, anti-American, Turkish Nepo baby that is committed to the destruction of the Western order. So, what are you going to do?
You said it, not me. You said it, not me. I'm just sort of fascinated by the lifestyle,
The hyper-consumerist, hyper-capitalist, ultra-materialist one where he preaches socialist values all the time?
No, I just meant the 24/7 ubiquitous streaming lifestyle. Do you ever think there are any downsides to it?
Yeah, there can be for sure. It just depends on like people are going to have inclinations towards certain things, and I'm probably lucky in that the time I was born in, and then whatever biological genes are turned on or off, like I can sit in an area for a long time. I like to play games. I'm relatively oppositional in nature, so I like fighting with people.
Right.
So
same here. I won't deny that.
All of these traits, well, even for what you do, right? Like there are a lot of people that would kill themselves if they had to deal with your Twitter feed for a day or two.
That is true.
So it's just like, picking these things, and then you try to maximize for the good things. So like I enjoy streaming because I can do arguably whatever I want.
Because sometimes I think to myself, gee, are there any almost like psychological trade-offs that I'm not fully conscious of in my having now been a nerd to, millions of people on the internet constantly screaming the most foul possible things at me day after day, where it has no longer any kind of psychological impact on me, at least in a way that would dissuade me from doing what I'm doing, right? Especially pedophile recently, because
I've seen
I
that,
have my perspective on the Epstein matter. But even before that, it was something else, right? Now I just sort of wonder, like, if you were a well-adjusted, normal person, you probably would have an emotional reaction or some kind of negative psychological reaction to people just flinging these most repulsive slurs at you. And now that no longer really has any kind of tangible effect on me, is that good, bad? I mean, there's nothing I can really do about it, but sometimes I do ponder, what did I get myself into, and like what maybe am I not fully cognizant of in terms of how that's affected my psyche?
I think the things you're not cognizant of are generally going to be negative. So like in psychology, you can have like a positive condition, or you can have the absence of something like a negative condition. I think what you're usually not aware of as much are the negatives. So I moved a lot of my my personal life used to be very public on stream, and then I kind of made an even heavier slant towards just political content at the end of 2023, early 2024. So I started moving a lot of my political life or my personal life off stream. And one of the things that I noticed that was just kind of funny to notice is that like if I'm talking to a person, that because I'm making kind of like more real life friends at Miami Beach now, I notice that like if I'm talking to you, I actually don't have to worry that every single thing I say to you is at some point going to be just posted somewhere on the internet. Like it's kind of a nice feeling.
It's just sort of funny that you did have to be mindful of that
because before it's like, I have to think like if this leaks, what is this person going to say or whatever, because it's just like, because everybody's going to talk shit, everybody leaks, everybody does or whatever. There's that, and then the idea of like meeting people on your own terms and not meeting somebody who already knows like every single thing about you and already has other people's opinions about you, or when it's like associating with normal people who are also kind of involved or notice like the online stuff can be weird sometimes because it's hard to explain to somebody like why are there a million people that you say think you're a murderer or a fascist or a Nazi or a pedophile or whatever. Like that can be hard to explain to a normal person.
Violently angry at you right now on the internet.
Yeah.
So what do you mean what do you mean when you say that in the past you had sort of lived your personal life online? Like what did that, because I'm actually not even familiar. Like what did that consist of? And was it like a conscious choice on your behalf?
It was a conscious choice. I did a huge variety of content. There was a lot of drama. There was a lot of like messy like friend stuff, dramatic stuff, like people coming on to debate and argue over pop culture issue, feminist stuff, red pill stuff, just crazy online people. I had like a revolving door in this Discord of people that would come in and out. It was just like it was very, very, very crazy.
So people wanted to debate like your personal relationships and things?
Sometimes it could be that, or it could just be like cultural related issues, or because I was friends with a lot of these people, so a lot of that bled into like the streaming stuff as well. So
I've always made a point to never really discuss my personal life on the internet.
Yeah.
Not that there's anything particularly salacious about it, believe me. It's just that like I don't want to even open that up for public scrutiny in any way, because like stuff could just get derailed and
of course,
blah 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 blah.
Yep.
So that's always been something I've been instinctively averse to doing. But I could see the appeal of it, because like if people are following you, I mean, I would almost be willing to declare, I would be willing to lobby for legislation that declared a total and complete moratorium on any failed comedians transitioning into becoming political pundits in any way.
It's a lot of them.
I feel like that's a scourge.
It's a lot of them, and it is a scourge.
No, but
100%.
if you go look at
Constantine was a comedian guy, and he got bullied.
Oh, was he?
Yes, a lot of them
there you go.
A lot of them are comedians that got bullied once, and then their entire political life became being on the far right. Like for Joe Rogan, it was I think it was on CNN where they call ivermectin horse paste. That was it. Joe Rogan's brain melted at that point. He's like, that fucking video was too yellow, and I think they docked. And then he was gone at that point. It was like,
but if you go and listen to that debate that I had with him in, I think it was November of 2024, I just keep saying, hey, what about Trump's like very well-established position on Iran? Didn't Trump just come out and advocate for Israel to launch preemptive strikes on Iran's nuclear facilities, like during the campaign, which he did, which would necessitate, if you know the first thing about the U.S.-Israeli relationship, an active U.S. role militarily in that operation. So Trump was outright calling for a joint U.S.-Israeli military strike on Iran. And Trump was also going around claiming that Iran was trying to assassinate him. He was appointing people who had already kind of set out a public argument for why a U.S. attack on Iran would be presumptively justified even before Trump came into office, such as his CIA director, Ratcliffe, who as a private citizen was going on Fox saying, look, they hacked Trump's campaign emails or something. I don't know if you recall that. And they're trying to assassinate him. Therefore, it should be foremost on our agenda to come into a next Republican administration and attack Iran. And
how are you so surprised by this? He tore up the JCPOA. When he was running in 2016, he said he was going to kill families of terrorists. He said he wants to leave people stationed in Syria so we can steal their oil. Like he bombed a Syrian airfield. He's been involved in attacks in Yemen, in countries in Africa. Like he's got the most history to where when a thing happens, it's like it's not surprising at all. Like have you ever watched like sometimes like primaries where people are looking and they're making up all these theories about what's happening and we don't know if Biden or Bernie and blah, blah, blah. And then when like the primary votes finally happen and the guy who, wins who is ahead, when you look back at it, you're like, people were telling so many different stories about this primary, but the whole story was really just guy who's huge front runner, remained huge front runner, and then won the primary. Which
happened with Biden, which happened with Hillary in 2016.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, it's actually not an interesting story at all. The interesting thing was all the crazy mental gymnastics to try to make it seem competitive along the way. And for Trump, I feel like it's exactly exactly this. This is like the least surprising thing in the world is everything he's doing in the Middle East.
Yeah, well, I mean, but the thing with the Dave Smith and that whole crowd was not just that they were making this begrudging lesser of two evils calculation, right? It's that they were putting forth this totally fictitious image of what could be expected from a second Trump term. And it was sort of algorithmically boosted by this, RFK Jr., Tulsi Gabbard, Elon Musk, Joe Rogan, like Avengers Squad take on Trump. Like if you're Ben Shapiro and you're supporting Trump on the grounds that you think Trump is going to enact a foreign policy that is akin to what you would have wanted in terms of your longtime foreign policy views, at least that's consistent. But in 2024, you had this phenomenon where like everybody was, just like outrageously audience captured and presenting Trump as though he was going to lead this anti-deep state revolution and he was going to restore free speech and he was going to end the wars. RFK Jr. went to that Madison Square Garden rally like a week before the election and said, vote for Trump, vote Republican this time, y'all. If you want to disband the warfare state, meaning Trump was going to somehow heroically stride into office and like abolish the military industrial complex. I mean, this was just berserk propaganda.
Yeah.
But it was so algorithmically incentivized, maybe because Elon was like tinkering with the algorithm on X in particular, but you saw it on YouTube, you saw it almost everywhere. And even a lot of people who I previously had an affinity with, and maybe who would have joined with in contesting some of the more histrionic, overwrought, anti-Trump oppositional narratives of the first term, like some Russiagate stuff or like some of the fascism hysterics. I felt like I couldn't communicate with a lot of them anymore in 2024, and they were kind of like, they were overcorrecting for some of these, I think, still largely groundless or at least wildly exaggerated liberal anti-Trump narratives and becoming functionally pro-Trump in a way that I always said that I was never interested in doing. I was accused of wanting to do that. But in 2024, it was like, spitting into the wind. And I don't think there's really been a reckoning with it, although there should be, because like if you were giving voters or your followers an impression that something so radically different was going to be ushered in with Trump 2.0 than actually has come to pass, like shouldn't you, I mean, we're not talking about like decades and decades ago, we're talking about like less than a year and a half ago. Like shouldn't there be some obligation now to go back and reevaluate and maybe like understand how it is that this false image of Trump, like this mirage of him, was propagandistically disseminated to such a large audience of like these these sort of apolitical, maybe a little bit disproportionately male podcast listening people who like think that they're anti-establishment in some vague way and thought that Trump was just the obvious choice. Like that's what Dave Smith, among others, were promulgating in 2024, and that's what I think there should be some kind of reckoning.
Yeah,
but
there
isn't. I mean,
there's no reckoning because
memory hold things as quickly as possible and then barrel right along.
Yeah, there's no accountability for any of it.
Yeah.
I feel like the trajectory I took was, I felt like in 2016, like I would have been described as a very, very anti-Trump.
Oh, should I tweet that I'm on this right now?
No, it's fine. It'll go up on my YouTube later, so you're fine.
Well, I'm going to tweet maybe. I'm just going to let people know that, like, if they know how to find your live stream.
Sure, if you want to.
See, I'm tweeting live on stream now. Isn't that exciting?
Live on stream. I feel like in 2016, I was like a very anti-Trump person. And then from 2016, 2017 to 2021, I think that I made the liberal journey that so many people made to where you're like, okay, well, we're being super hard on Trump 2017, 2018, that you get the whole Russiagate stuff and the Mueller investigation. Thank you so much. And everything else. And then I feel like I made this journey of like, okay, maybe I'm like a little bit too deranged on Trump. I need to peel it back a little bit. And then after J6, and then in the ensuing year, I think as I start to learn more about government and actually engage more with civics, and then I look back, I feel like 2016 and 2020 was like about as bad or worse than any liberal Trump derangement syndrome. Like when you say the Russiagate stuff, like there is a public phone call with Giuliani where we can just go listen to it for 42 minutes, like begging Zelensky, or it's his aide that picks up, to like start a false investigation into Joe Biden's son. Sure. That
was a Ukraine iteration of like the Russiagate theme. That was a little bit that's a little bit different from what I'm referring to, which was like the Crossfire Hurricane investigation.
Sure, I understand that, but like, can you think in the equivalent? Like, you remember that like the real Russiagate conspiracy stuff, in my mind, was what people said about Hillary Clinton. You remember the claims that Hillary sold unilaterally all of our uranium, or 80% of America's uranium, to Russia. Like that was a claim that was like a
that was in the New York Times.
In the
that
2016
was Ken Vogel in the New York Times covering the Clinton Foundation, like
sure, but this was
dealings.
Hardcore carried by right-wing people to say that like Hillary
Clinton
sold
Cash
our
was
uranium
this book, this Oppo research book.
But like, imagine if Hillary or any of these people had somebody of the caliber of fucking Manafort heading their campaigns, a guy who is not only convicted, but Trump eventually pardoned, or people like Stone who were directly coordinating with Russian hackers on released hacked materials from the DNC servers, from the DCCC, all the Podesta emails and everything, or were publicly making statements like, we'll reward whoever, or for the leaked emails or whatever, or that Trump Tower meeting that they completely fucking lied about, where that Russian lawyer lady came in and like, we were talking about shit, we wanted to get, like, I'm not saying, wait,
yeah.
I'm not saying that like this proves it, but I'm saying that if you collect all of those facts, it's already so exceptionally crazy that, like, I think most people, your priors on all of this would be so low that when so much stuff like that has happened, I think it's fair to wonder, like, what the fuck is going on here? This is so outside the norm. And I think there's way more evidence for any of that than, for instance, like, how long did we have to hear about Hunter Biden and Burisma and Sharp?
No, I agree with that. I mean, I think the Hunter Biden stuff was just like this ticky-tack stuff for the most part that, amazingly enough, although Republicans in Congress devoted
years and years, so many subpoenas.
For the 2 years that they had a majority under Biden, they basically spent it investigating Hunter Biden, but not even for anything that was going on contemporaneously. They were investigating stuff that went on when Joe Biden was vice president, like 9 years before.
Yeah,
they were saying that they were so concerned with like corruption involving Joe and Hunter's dealings with Ukraine, right? But we had like an active ongoing war at that point that the U.S. was supplying an enormous amount of weaponry for. And the best they could come up with was going back to 2014 and resuscitating stuff from the Obama administration.
Yeah. And it was about a Hunter who was not running for office and didn't have any presence in the White House anywhere near the way that, say, Jared Kushner did, or Witkoff did, right?
I mean, the Jared Kushner contrast is just outrageous.
Yeah, but I guess the thing that I'm saying, real quick, the thing I'm saying is that, like, you've never in your life said this word, Huntergate, right? Nobody's referred to, like,
not, no.
Yeah, nobody thinks about that. But, like, there is way more shit related to Trump Russia stuff, which at this point I don't think I don't think there was like Trump and Putin were having a meeting of the minds, but I think that their campaign was looking for anything they could get, even if it came from an illegitimate source.
Yeah, but the impetus for the FBI investigation that was launched against Trump in the first term, vis-a-vis Russian interference or Russian collusion, was the following proposition: that Donald Trump had, quote, colluded or conspired with the Russian state to get himself installed as president and subvert the 2016 election, and then subvert like the American government essentially, so that it could be controlled Manchurian candidate style by Vladimir Putin. Like,
which I think that claim is true.
Okay, well, I disagree with that.
Okay,
you honestly think that?
Like,
you think
Russia
hacked the election machines in 2016?
No. That was never the claim. That's what Republicans said the claim was, and there were a few crazy people. No.
I'll pull up a million clips.
You can pull up a million clips.
Adam Schiff saying they hacked the
machines.
As late as 2018, I swear to God, I'll pull up the polling right now. A supermajority of Democrats believed not just this lighter version of some kind of mild interference that maybe Trump benefited from, but that Russia explicitly hacked the voting machines in 2016 and fraudulently handed the election to Trump. You can find supermajorities of Democrats affirming that proposition.
Okay, so in that case, that claim was not only dumb, I'd never seen in my life anything substantiating that ever. So for anybody to believe that was incorrect for sure.
But that was Democratic conventional wisdom.
I would have to see that.
I'll show it to you right now. I'll show it right now.
Okay, yeah, go for it. Search for it. But when it comes to I'm 51% on this. I don't know if you've I don't know where you stand on this.
Can I search for it on here? Or?
Yeah, or give me a key to search for it. I think the laptop story, I think that was a Russian plant story. The Hunter Biden laptop thing. I don't think that Hunter Biden stumbled into a blind laptop repairman's fucking store who happened to.
So this is November 4th to 6th, 2018, YouGov poll. Question is, Russia tampered with vote tallies in order to get Donald Trump elected president. Do you find the following statements true or not true?
And it seems like 67%.
67.
That's not good. Okay.
Super majority.
Okay. That's a super majority.
That's enough to convict a president in the Senate.
It would. Yeah. Well, unless they think they can't convict him. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
so that's the
okay.
Kind
So
of
wait.
stuff.
So that part right there.
Yeah.
Is bad. Okay. So you shouldn't think
So we
that.
agree.
But like all the other stuff, I think was largely true. There was bad coordination between people who were directly in Trump's committee. So Roger Stone and the Guccifer hacker guy, I think that's a big bad connection.
But Roger Stone was never proven, and believe me, if
was never proven to what?
Could have proved, I'll tell you.
Yeah.
Was never proven to have any privileged foreknowledge of anything to do with any of these hacked email releases or WikiLeaks or anything like that. It was just Roger Stone being a bullshitter.
Well, no. One, he had
and
DMs
trying to
with
trumpet his insider knowledge.
One, he had DMs with the Guccifer hacker on Twitter. They were exchanging DMs.
So what? I had DMs with that guy too because I wanted to see if there was any information on it.
And if you would have been part of Trump's election campaign, I would be mad at you. But you're not. You're a journalist. It's a different thing. Number one. But number two, part of I think 4 out of 5 or 5 out of 6 of the Roger Stone convictions were him not cooperating. Were him saying, I'm not going to testify or fuck you or whatever else.
That's true.
Yeah. And one of the things he said publicly was, I'm not going to fucking rat out Trump. Yes. And that was it. So I was like, well, I don't know what else would have been there. And then Trump pardoned him on all of that.
Right. So, but it was a procedural crime. Like it didn't get to the actual crux of the theory.
Well, but the procedural crime was to avoid getting to the crux. Like if somebody says like, did you see this guy lie about this thing? And I perjure myself and I lie about a thing, or I say I'm not going to cooperate, and they say, well, we're going to hold you in contempt and prosecute you for that. It's like, well, they didn't answer that question. Well, why would he be lying about this thing? It's because he didn't want to answer that thing. And he even intimidated another witness. There was a second guy he intimidated because that was one of his other convictions for a witness intimidation of another guy to not get him to say anything about Trump.
Or on the other hand,
if
you are the target of a very aggressive special counsel investigation, and you have a defense lawyer who is worth their salt, what they will invariably tell you is that you should say as little as you possibly can and not cooperate with these investigators because they're on a warpath to try to prosecute you.
You cannot cooperate, but that's different than perjuring yourself or witness intimidation, right? For instance, none of the
Mike Flynn ended up pleading guilty to
the
perjury.
FBI.
But it was over.
It was not because it was over a direct contact with Russia before the election that he should have been forthcoming about. He lied about it.
But it was over. It was basic, like the gravamen of that lie, so called, was basically mixing up a date within the span of a week or two. It was about his communications with the Russian ambassador.
Yes, which is the thing that he lied to the FBI about, that he was so compromised that I think it was the State Department forced the DOJ to take action on it because they didn't even want him as part of the administration because they felt like that was a compromising lie. Because now if somebody knows that he's lied about that thing to the DOJ and FBI, now he could potentially be compromised. And this guy, he was like the national security advisor or whatever. Like, that's a pretty big position to fuck that up on. And it's about Russian people, which is already, there's so much crazy shit about this. And if we look at Michael Flynn's Twitter today, this guy is deeply... Yeah, exactly. So it's like, what the fuck? Yeah.
No, but that communication it was with Sergei Kislyak, right? He was the Russian ambassador. It was during the transition. So after Trump wins the election, hasn't come into office yet. It was Flynn speaking on the phone with the Russian ambassador saying, before you retaliate against these sanctions that Obama has imposed for so-called interference, remember Obama closed down, like in the waning days of his administration, this Russian sort of diplomatic outpost in Maryland, and he imposed some sanctions. Flynn said, before you retaliate in kind, wait till we get back in, wait till our administration comes in, and then we'll revisit it. Like, it was pretty run-of-the-mill diplomatic communication that got depicted in the most inflammatory possible light because there was already this political narrative going on that any potential communication whatsoever between anybody affiliated with Trump and anybody affiliated with Russia was hugely damning and therefore served as evidence for this overarching collusion narrative.
I understand that. But you have unprecedented levels of obstruction into this investigation with Trump later on. And you've got so many people, like, there is no world where the Democrats would have survived having a Manafort-like person anywhere in your orbit, let alone your chief campaign manager guy. That
Democrats have got plenty of shady consultants.
Name one person close to Manafort's prestige and Trump's, because he was the head of the,
he was the campaign manager for a bit. Yeah, he ran like the delegate operation at the convention.
He was I think he was the manager of the entire campaign. Manafort was the top position.
Yeah, he was for a time.
Illegally helping. Was it Yanukovych or was it beforehand? and undeclared, getting like tons of money to do these things, which was again for a Russian-backed candidate in Ukraine, undeclared, convicted, so much money that came from this conviction that they Mueller literally paid for.
From 10 years prior.
Wait, Hunter Biden who's not in office, who's not affiliated with any politician. Hunter Biden was 10 years prior, and there wasn't even anything bad about him that turned up. The only thing we even knew about Hunter Biden was because of the Russian email hacks that got leaked from the big guy.
I'm not arguing the Republican position on Hunter Biden.
Sure, I'm just saying that nobody like Manafort. Like if I ask you, who's one Democrat that's even remotely close to that weird being in a reasonable position? I'm sure we could find like a think tank donor or like Soros, like whatever kind of person. But in terms of like what Manafort was,
look. Okay, so the most
or like the Trump Tower meeting. You were going to say something like that. Trump was a bad meeting.
The Trump Tower meeting
they lied
never
about
amounted to anything
because they didn't have anything to turn over. But they lied about it.
I interviewed the guy.
Yeah.
Okay, who organized that Trump Tower meeting. He was a British music promoter. It was a nothing. I mean, there was no actual noteworthy information that was ever exchanged.
But the goal
it was just this like freelancing Russian lawyer who thought that maybe he could get Don Jr. and Jared Kushner's attention, and they basically just ended the meeting within 10 minutes, and then nothing really ever came of it.
But nothing did. But they took the meeting looking for something from a foreign national that they lied about.
I mean, yeah, fine.
And then what does Trump do when he gets into office? The only reason we have Mueller is because he immediately fires...
Who died today, R.I.P.
RIP. He fires Comey because he doesn't like the fact that Comey's not stopping the investigation. He's bullying Jeff Sessions every day on Twitter because Sessions recused himself. I'm just saying, it's the guiltiest shit in the universe. And then we get the call to fucking Ukraine and everything going on here. I'm just saying it's a lot of shit where it's like, there's so much more there that to dismiss all of it as Russian gate because a lot of people didn't like the fact that they thought that the voting machines were rigged or whatever, which is not a good claim, but that's nowhere near the level of delusion that conservatives have been on for the past 10 years.
Here's my larger point about Russiagate, okay? I'm going to connect it to today's most salient issues.
Okay.
It's that my issue is that there was always an overabundance of material, from my perspective, to actually formulate a rational critique of Trump based on. So, for instance, he ran in 2016 talking about how he could uniquely self-fund his campaign, right? He couldn't be bought by any of the donors or whomever, unlike the little puppet Marco, he would call him, or unlike Jeb Bush or whomever. And then immediately after he basically gets the nomination, he starts courting the same Republican donor class that he said he was going to be uniquely equipped to resist the temptations of, right, or not be subordinated to. And then he governed basically as a Republican donor class president. Like his main legislative accomplishment in the first term was just the tax reform bill that Jeb Bush or Marco Rubio or name your other standard Republican would have essentially done.
Correct.
And then and then he also implemented a foreign policy that escalated virtually every conflict that he inherited. For somehow, the highest number of Afghan casualties in the entire war was in 2019 when he escalated the air war. You barely heard any coverage of that. And he tried to do regime change in Venezuela. It was a little bit more of a ramshackle attempt in the first term, but then they got it together in the second term.
Was it Venezuela or was that Bolivia? Where they brought in the Guido guy, they brought him in as like...
Guido was Venezuela.
Yeah, okay, because they tried to do it there because they brought him into the U.S. to legitimize him and they wanted to send a bunch of aid trucks for him or whatever.
The Trump State Department, I think that was the Bolivia thing with the contested election with Morales. Was in Biden's term. And, regime change in Venezuela, claiming he's going to withdraw troops from Syria, but then leaving them to keep the oil, he says. And on and on and on. Like, basically... I always thought that the Democrats were so hysterically and like single-mindedly focused on what I would have argued were primarily, maybe not 100% exclusively in every possible respect, but primarily this kind of confected narrative that they wanted to use to go after Trump that also had a lot of negative political ramifications in that it created sort of an incentive structure where in order for Trump to prove that he wasn't in hock to Russia, what could he do? Take bellicose action against Russia, and he did. He bombed Russia's chief client state, or several of Russia's client states, meaning Assad. He tried to overthrow their chief client state in the Western Hemisphere, Venezuela. He threw out arms control schemes bilaterally between the United States and Russia. So the Open Skies Treaty, the INF Treaty, so the Intermediate Range Missile Treaty. And now, he's continuing that even further, actually. People, I guess, still maybe implicitly think that he's sort of in hoc to Russia, but as of February, there's the New START treaty is no longer operative, so there's no longer any mutual arms control regimen governing the nuclear arsenals of the United States and Russia for the first time since the early 1970s when it was the Soviet Union. So it's stuff like that I thought the Democrats would kind of almost like made a special point to strategically never really focus on, maybe in part because it would implicate them to some degree, implicate the bipartisan consensus to some degree. Instead, they would screech over and over again about Russia, racism, January 6th, democracy on the line, etc., and not like a lot of
okay, just real quick. I understand your point.
That's now transferring over to the fixation on Epstein, which has a lot of similarities with the Russiagate story.
So I disagree. I think the Epstein fixation is a 100% conservative-driven phenomenon, and I would defend that to my death because they are obsessed.
Oh, I disagree with that.
Can
I get some more water, by the way?
No. Okay. No, I'll grab you some in a second. I'll leave you with this thought because the thing is, of all the things you just mentioned, Russiagate, January 6th, democracy, and whatever the other thing was, all of those things in my mind, you can argue that maybe there was some strategic error committed or some unforced error committed by focusing on these issues. Every single one of these is more important in my mind, however unimportant you might think they are, than every single issue that Republicans hyperfixated on, like whether or not Leah Thomas should have been racing as an NCAA athlete, or whether or not in COVID, the states were trying to do mandatory vaccines and masks and rule us forever with infinite government shutdowns because they hated religious people, or whatever weird thing they fixated on, or the infinite obsession with Hunter Biden and his cock and having pictures of it. So my question is, here's what I don't understand, okay, is why is it that we can be critical of the Democrats and say, well, maybe they kind of flubbed this thing, an issue which, by the way, if that would have existed on the equal side, on the Democratic side, we would still be talking about it today, okay? But we can say that maybe the Democrats made an error there. Why is it the Republicans made 50 million obsessively weird errors and none of it sticks to them, none of it matters?
Good question.
Wait, think about that, and you can talk about it, and I'll listen. I'll grab your water. Go, I'm listening.
So remember when Kamala Harris gave her like kind of grand finale speech in 2024 at the Ellipse in Washington?
Yeah.
And it was about democracy, right? It was about how Trump is this existential threat to democracy.
He is, yeah.
Okay, you can think that.
I know that.
But
we've got the save back that we're looking at right now.
Notice, so we're now in and we're now like, what is it? 14 months into the second Trump administration. Democracy is still like roughly intact, meaning elections haven't been abolished.
That. Okay.
And another thing that tangibly is going on and observably is going on right now is that there's a giant war in the Middle East. I don't remember Kamala Harris ever making it a point to inform voters as best she could and as best she could kind of politically frame things that if you vote for Trump, you're potentially voting for a giant conflagration in the Middle East.
Hold on, wait. Am I crazy? Am I making this up? Did Kamala not explicitly say that Trump is going to send your children to die in Iran? Am I making this up?
Did she?
Didn't she
Maybe
have?
She did. I might not be remembering. Pull it up. She didn't give a speech at the Ellipse about it. She didn't make it a major emphasis.
She might not have said it at the.
She didn't make it a major emphasis because I followed the campaign pretty closely.
I'm trying to remember what she
said. You want
said.
a nicotine gum?
No, I'm good. I hate nicotine.
You're all into stimulants now, but you don't like nicotine. I
shouldn't
get you hooked, actually.
I just like amphetamine. It's not all stimulants, okay?
I guarantee you'll enjoy this.
Well, then I don't want to do it because I'll get addicted to it.
True.
Fuck, I'm trying to remember. I'm almost positive that Kamala had made some statements on...
I don't think she did. I mean, she came out on her, I think it was her 60 Minutes interview, and she was asked, like, what is the greatest threat to the United States? And she said Iran.
Which, well, I mean, that can be true, but that doesn't necessitate like a boots on the ground, like bombing response as well, right? So like, for instance, like Biden was supportive of Israel, but not in the same way that Trump is supportive of Israel.
Differently.
Right?
I mean, Biden actually was a long time ideological Zionist. I mean, he would actually come out and say this pretty frequently.
Sure. Well, every old person in the U.S. has to be.
Trump couldn't really even define what Zionism is. It's more just that in terms of his whole transactional approach to conducting politics, the pro-Israel, the hardline pro-Israel element was something that he could easily kind of subsume into his support base and then like adopt a lot of their views. And there was probably some pre-existing views around his, just like being in New York, kind of Palm Beach circles where it's like presumptively very pro-Israel. But he's different than Biden in that, like, so.
But the first big Iranian.
Find Kamala warning about Trump invading or sending
I feel
troops
like somebody should find it. I don't have the link right now. I think it was in one of the debates. It might have been a more general statement about being bullied by world leaders and being pulled into conflict. But I would have to
I
check.
don't think she
but
ever made a point to actually warn specifically about Trump running the risk of getting us mired in another protracted conflict in the Middle East with boots on the ground and economic turmoil, which is what's going on right now. Like nothing.
But I mean, like Trump literally.
Don't you think? I mean, would you agree with this? Nothing in the Democrats' messaging, by and large. I mean, maybe there's some quote that I don't fully remember off the top of my head right now, but like by and large, generally speaking, nothing that the Democrats were saying about Trump in 2024 or even the preceding 3 years would have given a preview of one of these kinds of eventualities with Trump.
Well, but I don't think that would have been a good messaging point because people just
Why
didn't,
not?
because people don't care much
The
about
war- the war is hugely unpopular.
the thing of highest salience at that point was inflation. It was the thing that the affordability stuff. Like I think because a lot of lefties will argue this when it comes to the Palestinian position. I think when we looked up, this might have just been Israel-Palestine, but like this issue is like 6% of voters thought that this was one of the most important things. I think at the time people were obsessed with the affordability thing, especially because of all the inflation, and then the Republican huge talking point had to do with the border, which is controlling the amount of illegal people that were coming in.
I don't know. I think if you had told people, look, like if you had a window into the future and you could tell people that, look, everybody, if you vote for Trump, here's what you're going to get. On February 28th, 2026, he's going to, in the middle of the night, just start a gigantic cataclysm in the Middle East.
Yeah, but couldn't they have just said, no, we're not?
No, what I'm saying...
And he said, like, why did the Abraham Accords? So what are you saying here? I'm the president of no new wars. So what are you saying here?
I'm just saying this was not something the Democrats ever felt like it was prudent to ever emphasize. And that just gets to this larger...
Like, look at how many people didn't believe the project. What about the Project 2025 stuff? Like, I was saying, like, I don't think you should message on this Project 2025 stuff because Americans just don't care about policy. But, like, they denied that the whole time and nobody seemed to care that that's, like, the playbook that they're following now that they're in office. And Trump has even said it, like, oh, actually, I like this now. Even before he was like, oh, I've never heard of this. I have no idea. So I mean, like, I just don't think Americans...
My point is that the thrust of the Democrats' messaging never would have prepared the public to anticipate something like what's going on now vis-a-vis Iran. I think that speaks to the larger skewing of Democratic priorities in the Trump era in terms of what they emphasize and what they don't, where on the one hand, they're pretty content, it seems, to throw everything at the wall and see what sticks in terms of Trump. But despite this huge cacophony of anti-Trump messaging that they would constantly experiment with, nobody ever thought that maybe it might be sensible to warn about a giant war in the Middle East. I was warning about it. I was warning about Trump's Iran position in particular. Nobody would really listen.
But I don't know. I don't know how you could bring that. I don't even know how you would be able to argue that point with the guy who's just going to point to the fact that he did the Abraham Accords. He's the one that... You could point
to his record in the first term, which was geared toward regime change in Iran. You could point that he himself says that in June of 2019 he was minutes away from bombing Iran.
Sure, but he didn't, right? So you just say I didn't do it, right?
No, but you could project outward to the future and make
for the average American mind. You can barely project out to 2 weeks from now, let alone like related to foreign policy.
I mean, if you're willing to deal enough in abstraction that you could say that voting for Trump is the end of democracy, whatever that means exactly. But
well, like on January 6th, you're trying to coup the government. I think that's pretty visceral. We had videos of it.
But you're not willing to project out in the future around a potential cataclysmic military conflict. That just shows what you're prioritizing in terms of your messaging. Not an aversion to something being too abstract for voters to understand.
I think that January 6th is way more cataclysmic than whatever's happening in Iran right now.
Really?
Absolutely, 100%. Huh. You had a president for the first time that I'm aware of in U.S. history try to circumvent the peaceful, or he did circumvent the peaceful transfer of power. It was a violent transfer of power. And then you have Iran. How many?
What's the death count in Iran versus January 6th at this point?
I don't know. What was the death count in the Revolutionary War compared to the death count of fucking COVID? What does that have to do with anything? What does the death count have to do with anything?
Well, you're saying in terms of what's more cataclysmic or destructive or lamentable, I do think that the death count is one metric we can use. It doesn't have to be the be-all, end-all. That's
the death
one
count, when I'm thinking of harm,
I
I would never use the death count as the harm to American democracy. I think I would look at what was the president doing?
Just harm in general.
I'm not talking about harm in general. I'm talking about specific harm to democracy.
I think democracy.
The U.S. president trying to circumvent the peaceful transfer of power with a whole ass scheme that's completely public, I think is crazy to me.
Well, I mean, I do think that a protracted war being launched does tend to go hand in hand with, for example, the abridgment of civil liberties, with more government surveillance, with more... less tolerance for freedom of speech.
I agree. But Bush didn't try to prevent the peaceful transfer of power. Like nobody tried to coup the government after the Iraq and Afghanistan war, except for Trump.
I acknowledge that Bush did not do what Trump did on January 6th. No argument there. I'm just saying like there are reasons to be worried if you're worried about democracy, broadly construed, just in terms of kind of liberal democratic norms and
I can agree with you there, but that's
Constitution.
way more abstract than the president is trying to coup the government, is trying to prevent the peaceful transfer of power. Like in an abstract way, more Middle
Do you
East.
even have a problem with the Iran thing going on right now? Or are you basically in favor of it or opposed to it, or what's your view?
There's like a world where I could be okay with it, but not under this administration and not with the people leading it who are leading it right now. I'm not a fan of the.
So if it was Kamala Harris or Gavin Newsom or Pete Buttigieg doing it right now, you'd be more inclined.
I would have to know what the purpose or what their vision is or what exactly is going on.
Okay.
I guess right now in my mind, this is exclusively like an Israeli project that Trump is along for the ride on because he's an idiot. Is how I view it.
Okay.
I don't think Trump is conferred
So
with.
what are some hypothetical circumstances where you can imagine yourself supporting something along these lines?
Hypothetical circumstances would be a world where Israel is still more constrained by a Democratic president rather than a Republican one, and then a world where, say that same, when the Ayatollah is killing protesters and the thousands or tens of thousands, depending on what numbers you believe, if that event is happening and there's some other group of people in Iran that seem like they could take over the government and there could be something, I don't know, obviously these types of regime changes could be messy. We have the whole Iraq thing. I don't know if I would, but at that point I would at least have to think about it, as opposed to right now, I don't know if you know, I don't know if anybody knows why the United States is involved with Iran. It feels like we've gotten 3 different reasons stated, and I don't know what we're actually doing there, what the mission success is. Well,
I'm much more instinctively averse to it just on principle, I guess, regardless of who would be president, meaning forcible imposition of regime change in Iran by the United States. That would be more of my starting point in terms of analyzing this, whether or not it's Donald Trump. Obviously, with Trump at the helm, you have a much sort of crazier situation.
Sure,
where
I agree with you. That would be but I'm saying there are things that could make me consider it, right? If Iran killed 10 million people under Kamala Harris, you'd be okay, well, fuck, maybe we should do something, right? I'm saying I would at least think about it. But under Trump, I don't think Trump has a mind or a vision for the Middle East. And whatever is happening right now is probably exclusively serving the interests of Israel, which I don't know necessarily benefits everybody in the region or even long-term U.S. interests in the region.
Aren't you a pro-Israel guy? What would be your problem if it were serving the interests of Israel?
Because the United States should work with Israel because oftentimes our interests are aligned. And as long as our interests are aligned, I think they're a valuable partner to work with. I think that because of the style of government, because of the background of their people, I think that we generally align more on things. But when those things fall out of alignment, well, fuck Israel. Then we need to bring them back into alignment. So there are things that Israel has done, I think, recently, their whole handling of the Palestinian problem has always been a huge fuck to everybody in this fucking region. But the stuff related to Iran, that's a regime that Israel really, really, really wants to see gone. Now, to be fair, a lot of our friendly Arab leaders, in Saudi Arabia and stuff, they also kind of want to see them gone too. But I think that Israel would be happy to have Iran gone and then sever ties with the United States and then kind of run this region as a regional power independent actor, because who the fuck is going to fight with Israel in that entire region with Iran gone? And then the U.S. just has to engage with them like a neutral third party, as opposed to right now where we're kind of still sort of running shit. I don't think,
I think the decisive role of Israel in this war has been overstated for a variety of different reasons. I'm not saying that they're irrelevant. Obviously, they're waging the war in concert with the United States at the moment. I just think that the attempt to ascribe singular responsibility to Israel is being done for a variety of kind of questionable political reasons or even self-absolving reasons on the part of people like a Dave Smith or a Tucker who now want to shift blame entirely onto Israel because they can't grapple with how they peddled this radical misconception of Trump in 2024. Right?
Well, no, I understand. Let me be clear when I say this, okay? If I were to tell you, okay, that my...
I think this is part of what...
Wait, real quick. If I'm at home, okay, and I were to tell you that while I was at home, if I were to tell you my 30-year-old son stabbed and killed his...
Is he in the next room?
30-year-old girlfriend. Yes, stay there in the next room. My 30-year-old son stabs and kills my 30-year-old girlfriend, right? I'm imagining that you would say that was his fault, right? He stabbed his girlfriend and killed her. You're not going to blame me for that, right?
Sure.
Right? But let's say that I tell you. But let's say that I tell you my 5-year-old son stabbed and killed his friend while he was at my house. You probably blame me for that. But he did it, right? I'm viewing Israel as the child. I think that Israel has its own goals and desires. So when I say Israel is pushing and it's because of them, what I'm saying is that the U.S. government for Trump, they don't have the responsibility, the vision, the wherewithal to actually issue any sort of guidance or to compel Israel to act in a certain way. That Israel's always wanted to do this. Under Biden, they would have gladly done a regime change operation in Iran, but the U.S. would have said, we're not doing that right now. You guys are fucking crazy. But under Trump, they will. So when I'm saying I'm blaming Israel, I'm still blaming the Trump admin. I'm not shifting all the response to Israel because it should be on the U.S. It's well, hold on, let's think about what's going on here. But the current administration doesn't, is what I'm...
Yeah, I guess, I've just been trying to make the argument that Trump is more the primary agent of responsibility here than I think a lot of people, especially on the internet, have been willing to accept. Because what did Trump come barreling into office for his second term proclaiming? Basically that he was on this globe-spanning mission of conquest.
No.
Yes?
He came in as the president of No New Wars.
Well, after he got elected, right? After he got elected,
Then he started to change,
rambling
sure.
about wanting to seize Greenland.
And building more ships and everything. That's true,
He gives his inaugural address, which I don't think anybody picked up on at the time other than me, but I happened to notice and thought it was a little bit curious that his speechwriters decided to write him lines heralding William McKinley as his model for the second term. And then he issued an executive order basically at the day he came into office, touting William McKinley basically as the president who he wanted to emulate. And if you go and read about William McKinley, that was the first president who inaugurated these overseas conquest missions on which he sent U.S. troops on overseas expeditions to conquer foreign lands that most Americans never heard of, like the Philippines or Guam. Or Cuba, more people would have heard of Cuba, but like the Philippines, like nobody had any. Guam, I mean, Guam, like was at the top of the mind for everybody in 1900 in the United States, probably not. But for whatever reason, oddly enough, that's what Trump and his speechwriters thought was the theme that they should most emphasize in his inaugural address, which is like, what gets like recorded for history in terms of laying out the agenda for a president when they come in for their term. And then he starts rambling about wanting to take over the Panama Canal. He starts talking about wanting to take over Canada. People dismiss it as a joke. At a certain point, it's not particularly funny. Mm-hmm. Obviously, that's less practically.
Sure, I understand what you're saying. Here's a question. This is what I want you to deal with. Okay? If Israel was saying we're not doing regime change in Iran, we need to chill about this, United States of America, the U.S. would not be bombing Iran.
I'm just not sure what that would look like because it's so integral into Israeli state policy and political culture at this point to take some kind of decisive action against Iran to overthrow that government that I'm not even really understanding how we can entertain the hypothetical and still be talking about Israel, right? Because then we're talking about almost something else.
Let's assume that Netanyahu was losing domestic popularity because the war was raging on too long in the Gaza Strip and the people didn't have the appetite for it. Or so, we can think of a million ways that it could have gotten there. But if Israel would have said, okay, maybe a full-on attack against Iran, maybe not good, I don't think without them pushing, I don't know if Trump is on board with this.
Trump seems to believe that Iran was trying to assassinate him. And therefore, he's entitled to take vengeance on Iran. When they killed the supreme leader, he told Jonathan Karl of ABC, I got to him before he got to me. Meaning it's almost like this schoolyard bully thing almost in his mind.
Yeah, but I think Trump says retarded shit. I don't know if that's indicative into his state of mind for starting the war.
I think it's indicative of like one of the
because they could have just assassinated him and just been done with it. No, they killed Soleimani. Trump seems like the kind of crazy dude who would assassinate a fucking Iranian.
They killed Soleimani, and then that resulted in blowback where there might have been attempts. We don't know how serious they were, but like let's just.
Well, it was really serious because Iran, I think, blew up one of their own civilian airliners on accident after when they tried to retaliate.
I'm just saying. I think that look, I'm not denying that the role of Israel was important in kind of maybe accelerating things or crystallizing it, and Netanyahu in particular knows how to cater a case to an American president because he basically grew up in Philadelphia, and like he just is very well schooled in knowing how to make an argument that is in furtherance of Israel's interest to an American president. Maybe Trump is a little bit more impressionable and persuadable than a Biden would have been.
Impressionable, yeah.
Yeah. But I'm just saying that nonetheless, this Iran excursion, as Trump calls it, fits very neatly into this larger governing paradigm that Trump came into office advocating and enacting and implementing, which is that he's on like this global conquest mission. He now says he's going to be taking Cuba. He has declared himself the ruler of Venezuela, not just that he abducted the president and bombed Venezuela, but that he's the ultimate governing authority in Venezuela, such that he has veto power over Venezuela's governance. Same with Gaza. I mean, Trump declares himself the ultimate governing authority.
He made that peace board, right?
Yeah.
You know who wouldn't have done this? Kamala Harris.
Yeah. I think you're probably right. It would have been. It would have been
probably more, right. You think Kamala would have put herself on the head of the peace board?
Probably not. Probably not. It would have been much more conventional. It would have been much. It would have been a continuation of Biden, pretty much. So I just think that I think at the very least that interpretation of why Trump has started this war with Iran is worth giving a little bit more credence than I see as being commonplace at all in the popular discussion of this, rather than focusing so monomaniacally on Israel as though like it's the prime mover and its influence is insurmountable and you can never defy Israel. Like they're always going to be calling the shots.
No, this is cringe. I don't believe the AIPAC obsessive stuff.
stuff.
I understand, and all of that is stupid as fuck. Or the weird anti-Semitic stuff, or the Zog stuff. Zionist-owned government. I agree that all those talkers are stupid as fuck. Okay. But I do think right now, I think Israel can do basically whatever it wants because I think Trump is just a weak man with no vision for the region. And if he sees something might serve his interests and Israel can sell it to him, I think he'll just go along with it instantly.
What do you think of like Russiagate levels of Democrats thinking right now that Trump launched the war for something to do with Epstein? Whether it was just to deflect politically from the attention on the Epstein files, or because maybe he's compromised by Israel and they've got blackmail on him.
When I look at
there's variations of this theme, but like if you look at this poll that was done a week or two ago, it's you got super majorities similar to the poll I just showed you of Democrats affirming one way or another that Epstein is like a causal factor in why the war was launched.
Epstein is, in my mind, is just kind of like right now, it's the epitome of populist brain rot. It's just like the people have been really obsessed for a long time with the idea of like a global elite pedophile ring that involves all the head leaders of the world who are controlling everything behind the scenes. And that's just an idea that a lot of populist-leaning people, which is a lot of people now, are really attracted to. And the reason why I put the onus on the Trump admin for this is because I don't think anybody's done more to undermine the institution of government and the institution of the media and the institution of everything in our information landscape than the conservatives. Like you've got Bongino on fucking, what was it, Tim Pool or Joe Rogan, who's like, I got a friend of the CIA and he's seen all the Epstein shit and he knows it's
I think that was on his own Dopey Brumble
Was
podcast.
it on his own?
Yeah,
I thought he was talking another. He might have been on his own.
Maybe,
You've got like Pam Bondi, who's here's the fucking part one, the fucking Epstein files. Like I think the conservatives ham this up hardcore, but they ham up every conspiracy theory between. Like how can you look at I love you, vegan gains. We don't want to do that right now. Trust me.
What was that?
Just another guy who wanted to argue stuff, but it's not worth it right now.
Vegan gains. Okay.
Yeah. The Epstein
have
stuff.
To take some workout tips from him.
The Epstein stuff, like in my mind, is like looking at like how do you not draw a line directly from QAnon and Pizzagate to like the Epstein stuff? Like, that's why I said I feel like it's a Republican.
But you said it's like 100% a right wing.
I'm sorry, I meant like instigated. Like absent them, I don't think that the Democratic base would have. Like, I don't think a populist type like Bernie Sanders or even AOC are pushing on the Epstein stuff anywhere near as the populist types on the right. But I do think that populists on the left find it attractive.
But I mean, however intense any particular Democrat is pushing it right now, it's become such a dominant narrative that you have like the vast majority of Democratic voters just saying that Trump went to war with Iran over Epstein.
Yeah.
So that's notable, right?
Not
and like
good.
it's all and then like there have been periods, maybe not quite so much in the past few weeks after the war started, but like if you tune into MSNBC or MS Now or like any kind of more Democratic leaning media outlet, it's like Epstein 24/7.
Sure.
Or had been,
Yeah. But who brought this up to the salience of level that it's at now? Well, Republicans, when they came in, obsessed over this. Pam Bondi and the Biden, they obsessed over it. I found new documents in the Southern District of New York that I'm going to bring all of them. They obsessed over this. So, yeah, of course, now that they obsess over it, now like, oh, fuck, don't look at it. And this is populist brain rot 101. All of your elite leaders that you thought were conspiring against you actually were part of a huge child rape pedophile ring. There's like everybody, all the populist people want this story.
There's always been an undercurrent of people who did believe that. I mean, like, we're all fundamentally ruled by this cabal of elite pedophiles.
But the Republicans are the ones that elevated this.
But now it's become so incredibly mainstream.
I agree, yeah. But the Republicans are the ones that brought this up here so much, right?
Well,
if I run around the house and I sprinkle oil on everything, I set it on fire, we both burn. But like the guy who is setting the house on fire probably has a little bit more responsibility. But I agree, it's a huge problem on the Democratic side too. I don't like talking about it. I hate it when people bring it up all the time.
Oh, really? Okay. But so, I mean,
or when I say I don't like talking about it, what I mean is that like it's a brain rot topic. Most people's thoughts on it are fucking retarded. And most people that think that the Epstein thing is important hate both sides equally anyway. So it doesn't even serve my political narrative which I want to support the Democrats more than the Republicans, and I don't think there are as much of an element of truth of most of the claims people make about it.
I think it's a fascinating narrative. I can't get enough of it, just from the standpoint of like chronicling the mass hysteria or the moral panic, as I would regard it, and how it's become so pervasive in terms of the beliefs that engenders and how it's internationalized. Like it's not just the United States. I mean, this has like been the number one political scandal or controversy in France, Norway, Slovakia, United Arab Emirates for a time, Britain, obviously. So I just think of it's like endlessly fascinating from that perspective, and just how people have so many fictional beliefs or myths that they've just absorbed unwittingly and assume must be true about it, that I can't get enough of just in terms of like documenting it and almost theorizing what went on here. But like in terms of the right-wing valence of it, yes. what makes the issue so resonant and why people, I guess, maybe are kind of badgering you to talk about it is because of the ideological synergy of it, meaning it's not limited to one or the other. It doesn't neatly kind of...
it very neatly encapsulates everybody with
right versus left.
75 IQ or lower is what it neatly tracks with.
But go back to in 2018, right? So there was a series of articles in the Miami Herald by this Julie K. Brown journalist. I don't know if you're familiar with her, if you've seen her, but like she's still considered one of the preeminent Epstein expert journos in the country.
Okay.
She puts out this series of articles in November of 2018 that breathes new life into the Epstein saga, right? And it causes a huge controversy politically because she frames it as Trump's labor secretary, Alex Acosta, gave a sweetheart deal to
Epstein,
sex offender, blah, 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 blah. And Julie Brown has said that, she was pursuing this story because she was looking for an angle that she could, for an article, for like a avenue of inquiry that she could pursue that was anti-Trump, that she could peg to Trump. And she found the perfect news peg. Trump's labor secretary, Alex Acosta, was in fact the U.S. attorney for the Southern District of Florida when Epstein was prosecuted and had to plead guilty to pursuant to a federal non-prosecution agreement in 2008. And so she kind of revived this, right? And she also tied in with Me Too. She credits Me Too as catalyzing this renewed interest in the Epstein story circa 2018. Then the federal prosecutors in the Southern District of New York, they see this article and like the huge political uproar that it engenders, and think, okay, maybe we need to think about maybe federally re-prosecuting this guy. They're already collaborating with one of the victims' lawyers, Bradley Edwards. But in some of these new emails, you see them passing around links to the Miami Herald series, and like the Southern District of New York was kind of a hotbed for the more sort of like adventurous anti-Trump prosecutors that were allowed to stick around in the DOJ in the first administration. So it became it was like a largely, not exclusively, but largely like liberal coded issue at that time in terms of how its mainstream purchase that it was getting. And then Epstein ends up being re-indicted. He's put in the federal jail facility. He dies in custody. Then there's a whole kind of blossoming of these more like left-oriented conspiracist narratives like TrueAnon and those people because like they think, oh, we can connect this to Bill Barr being the attorney general, and Bill Barr's father might have hired Jeffrey Epstein to teach at the Dalton School in New York City in the 70s. So there's a lot of dot connecting they can do, right? And the Trump administration was in power when the death occurs. So if people want to make the most nefarious possible inferences from that connects it to Trump in some way, they can. And so, there is a big left liberal interest in it in terms of just the kind of more commercial pop cultural coverage like Netflix and stuff. That's not right wing really, but they do this like filthy rich documentary that is very like survivor focused. Like we got to lift up their voices, and you see a lot of that style of coverage that kind of gets people maybe of a little bit more of like a Democratic aligned or like loosely political, maybe apolitical, but culturally liberal in some fashion, kind of thinking that the Epstein story is a really important thing to have to be preoccupied with. But then, when the Biden administration comes in, then you do see a more fulsome kind of right-coded variation on why people are so preoccupied with this, because they end up kind of spinning it as they're covering up the client list. Like Elon Musk started touting this in 2022.
One thing I'll say before we move on to the Biden, because in my mind, and maybe it's just the political circles we were in, I can think of like 3 or 4 things off the top of my head that were immediately more gripping to the American public than the Epstein stuff, even in 2019. Like that story might have had purchase for a little bit, but I feel like peak Me Too stuff was like 2013 to 2015-ish, and then
Me Too was 2017. That's when the Harvey Weinstein thing comes out, and everybody says.
Or maybe I'm thinking
that's when they start the Me Too hashtag.
Sorry, okay. I'm thinking of like when all the, I think peak wokeness or whatever was like started in
no,
like
I'm talking
2013.
Peak Me Too specifically.
Sure. So Me Too might have been a few years later, but I feel like the Epstein stuff was never as big of a story in the American mind, especially for 2019, as like every part of COVID was larger than that. Like COVID in general, like lab leak stuff, the mRNA vaccines and all of that stuff. I think the Hunter Biden like laptop story was 2020. I'm not mixing up my elections, right? That was 2020 for Biden coming in, right? The Hunter Biden laptop story, I think had way more salience in the American mind. I think that the general I feel like all of these topics were way more. I'm sure I heard the name Epstein, but it was nowhere near in 2019 like the level like every American is thinking about this.
You're right, but it ended up but it's still like percolating in different quadrants of the ideological
all the whole
spectrum.
BLM riots and everything. Of course, the J6 stuff. Yeah,
you're not wrong, but like the foundation had been set for it potentially to explode because you did have these right wing surrogates like Kash Patel, or Trump supporting surrogates like Kash Patel and Bongino and these other podcast guys saying that vote for Trump in 2024 because we're going to crush the deep state, and by extension of that, we're going to get the Epstein files released. Even though Trump himself was sort of more non-committal, but his surrogates were very much gung-ho about it. And then it was the perfect recipe for it to just explode to even more monumental proportions when Trump's back in office, right? Trump did have a personal relationship with Epstein years ago, and they put out this memo last July saying, look, all these kind of common tenets of the Epstein mythology we're dispelling, meaning there's no client list, there's no blackmail operation, there's no predicate to charge any additional people with any sex crimes. And so it just explodes in a way that is orders above what maybe it had been percolating in the background as for the preceding couple years. I'm just saying that like there was a diverse ideological confluence of people that were interested in the Epstein story that, and then you light the fuse and then you add Trump, who's like the dominant narrative anyway, and lo and behold, now it's the number one anti-Trump oppositional narrative of the second term, akin to how much Democrats would have been focused on Russia or Mueller or that narrative in the first term. I mean, look at any congressional hearing now. Epstein is virtually all that Democrats can talk about. I mean, again, I'm not complaining because I find it really fascinating, but from a different perspective. But I just think, if we want to sort of look at why this is so salient now and is just transmogrified into this international mega narrative, it's more cross-ideological than maybe I think you might be giving it credit for.
No, just to be clear, just to be clear, so I can say this for the millionth time, I agree that right now it's captured everybody, which drives me crazy. That's why I keep saying populist. But the thing that exploded it into the average person's mind, I think, was the conservative movement. That absent the conservatives being so obsessed with it, and then absent then acting the guiltiest possible way that you could of turning it into such a huge obsessive point, and now trying to retreat from it as much as possible, such that they refused to release the files. Was it the longest time it had ever been for the House to sit a new representative because Mike Johnson didn't want to sit the new lady
the Arizona lady.
That like it was them that drew. So like if I would have talked to you in 2015 and I said, I got this friend and they don't believe in vaccines or whatever, like I don't know what to do. Like in my mind in 2015, I'm thinking like, okay, your friend's like a crazy hippie person. Whereas today, if I hear about an anti-vaxxer, they're right wing 99% of the time, right? So, but if I were to say like the anti-vaxxer movement today, I would say it's like definitely like a left wing phenomenon. Not really. Like it kind of sort of was more of a left. I feel like I don't know if a far left.
I feel like
everything.
there's still some crunchy left-ish people who are anti-vax.
Yeah, but by and large today, you can track like death rates and everything from COVID, from Republican counties and stuff. But I agree that it's a both sides. Everybody's obsessed with it today.
Don't get me wrong. I mean, Pam Bondi and Kash Patel and Bongino and that whole clown car of people. They definitely egg this on astronomically, in part because, and here's the basic reason why they fumbled it so disastrously. It's because they can't be honest about it, neither can really anybody, which is that the stuff that people assume to be true, meaning of some kind of pedophilic sex trafficking operation that ensnared all these prominent VIPs, and there was blackmail, and we got to get to the bottom of it. Like none of that was ever substantiated by anything remotely approaching credible evidence, and that's only been verified by the release of millions more records. But nobody wants to say that because you don't want to be in a position like I have been as this like lone wolf, where you're accused of like making excuses for quote pedophiles, or like you're called all the most foul names you can possibly be called if you take any kind of more contrary perspective on this stuff.
Well, while that's true for maybe somebody in your position, it's even worse if you're in Trump's position, because all those guys hardcore over-indexed on them. I don't know what the political strategy was, if they legitimately thought they were going to find something, because it's one thing for a person who is reporting on things or talking about things to be like, I don't think it's that big of a deal. It's a much different thing. How humiliating was it? Do you remember when I think it was Bongino and Patel were sitting side by side with each other on like
on Joe Rogan, I think it was.
Was it Joe Rogan? Where they were like,
it was on Fox.
It was on Fox, yeah. And they were like, we've seen everything. There's nothing there. Like how like if it would have been two Democrats or whatever who were saying this after whatever, okay, fine. But for these guys who were a part of like the whole group of people who were overhyping the fuck out of this shit for so long, like it makes it a million times worse. So of course none of them can ever back off it. I
said at the time, I don't understand how Kash Patel's position as FBI director is sustainable. Anybody can pull up the clip of him in December 2022 2023 as a private citizen, saying now infamously, and this quote's going to be seared in my memory for the rest of time, he's saying to the previous FBI director, Christopher Wray, put on your big boy pants and tell us who the pedophiles are, as if he somehow knew and had exclusive insider info that this list of pedophiles was being concealed by the Biden FBI, and Christopher Wray could just open a drawer in his desk or something and tell the public who all these demonic pedophiles were, and they were going to implicate all these Democratic donors, Bill Gates and Clinton and Larry Summers and Reid Hoffman and whomever. And now he has to come out with stone-faced and say, look, turns out kind of did kill himself. There's no real trafficking. Like, nobody's going to take that seriously.
Yeah.
He's not going to be a messenger that anybody's going to credit as legitimate, given like the comical contrast that you can find in 2 seconds of Google searching with how he approached this issue in the past, when he was just kind of this like flame-throwing, red meat tossing right-wing pundit. So yeah,
Sure.
so the Trump administration kind of laid its own trap for itself in a lot of ways, and they've never figured out how to extricate it themselves from it. So it just keeps
I think
going
it's
on
very
and on and
easy
on.
for them to extricate themselves from it. I think the issue is one of the big drivers, in my opinion, of things like the Epstein story. It's similar to like anti-immigration stuff. I think it's like just general discontent. So in an area where, like, I hate so much about the Trump administration now, and this is one of the reasons why I hate America. I shouldn't say hate America, but it frustrates me endlessly about American citizens is as long as life is going well, people will generally chill the fuck out about a lot of stuff. Like if gas prices were low, the economy was going much better, affordability was improving for people. Like if all these indicators are going up, I think people might not be as fixated on the Epstein stuff. I still think it would be a pretty sensational story, but I think the fact that like everything is so fucked, and it seems like there's like another fuck thing and another fuck thing and another fuck thing. The Epstein story is that one thing that has maintained its like crystal clear point of this administration is fighting tooth and nail to never release it. So as long as there's like a new fuck up and a new fuck up and a new fuck up, you can keep pointing back at that and go like, oh, what's going on with this? Yeah.
Have you noticed that all the most clever and ambitious Democratic politicians right now, some of whom are planning to run for president, like Ro Khanna, they're now almost toying with a embryonic stump speech that they're going to use within in the next year or two. Ro Khanna in particular. But you see guys like John Ossoff, who's being touted as somebody who could potentially run as a Democratic presidential candidate. That guy Talarico, who won the primary in Texas. They're all saying stuff like there's an Epstein class that we all have to band together and dislodge. It's almost like they're trying to do the Occupy Wall Street, us versus the 1%.
It's the populist messaging.
Class.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
But the thing with the Epstein class kind of theme is that by invoking Epstein over and over again, you're not just making some kind of like neutral reference to the moneyed elites who are, skewing societal resources or something like that. You're referencing pedophiles. That's what most people think. Like that's the word association that the 99% of people will make if you utter Epstein at them today.
Yeah.
But yet they're happy to leverage that into this political talking point now that's going to animate, I guess, the
populace
synthesis of American politics going forward, such that Ro Khanna, he can't make a media appearance or give a speech nowadays without inveighing against the Epstein class and praising himself for having brought some kind of like vague accountability, and also demanding that like unspecified people be charged with crimes. And also, by the way, he and his little compatriot Thomas Massie, they just slandered 4 random people with no public profile. I don't know if you saw this, as having been complicit in child sex crimes. Ro Khanna went on the floor of the House and said, the Trump DOJ, they're redacting the names of all these powerful men to insulate them from criminal accountability, and they turned out to be guys who had just like literally nothing at all to do with Epstein whatsoever. It was just something that he and Thomas Massie conflated. Thomas Massie said they were incriminated in child sex trafficking crimes. It turned out to be like an auto mechanic and an IT manager in New York. And so, you might not be interested in it, and I get it from your perspective, but I do think in terms of civil liberties and in terms of a lot of downstream negative repercussions of this, it is worth paying close attention to. And, the Democrats are pretty fixated on it at this point. So like,
I agree.
It's almost like, whether or not you like the issue, it's kind of politically salient enough at this point that you have to deal with it to some extent.
Oh, I super don't. I can just play video games all day and fucking ignore it.
That's true.
I talk about what the fuck I want to talk about.
That is true.
But there's other stuff, like I don't like talking about the Middle East anymore. I hate it. I think it's annoying. I think most people talk about it.
Out on it?
Yeah, because it's like a bunch of anti-Semitism, but then it's also a bunch of like Islamophobia, and then it's a bunch of like stupid like young people. It's just like the conversations about it are horrible. That's not to say that it's not an important issue and it's not having real impacts domestically here. Or actually across the entire world right now because of the oil squeeze and everything. But I just hate talking about it.
So when people have been, it's like when people in your chat or whomever, your correspondents have been imploring you to talk about Epstein, like what is their argument as to why you should talk about it?
Well, they all think it's the most important thing ever because we're one email release away from uncovering like the actual global blackmail list of the black book clients that had a factory of 6-year-olds that were being serially raped by every wealthy person and blah, blah, blah in the world. I'm strawmanning them a little bit.
Yeah.
And then my point is that I haven't made any harsh judgments on it one way or another. I feel like if there was prosecutable stuff in there, I feel like they would have already gone after it, but I'm all okay with other people. If they want to go through the files and explore stuff, they can do that. I just don't, I'm like a very I don't want to say conspiracy in like a super loaded negative way, but I generally don't enjoy deep diving on that stuff very much because usually the evidence is just not there for it. And it's a lot of like reaches and a lot of like associative stuff that's just not as interesting to me. I like more concrete stuff. But then a lot of my audience just interprets it as me either being part of the black book pedophile sex ring or it's that I'm covering for them or I don't know.
So this most recent round of Epstein Files was released on January 30th, right? And it just so happened by total coincidence, I promise, that I happened to be offline for a couple days. Like a couple times a year, I'll take a detox, right? And I'll just like maybe play Zelda or something.
Sure.
And it happened to coincide with in the most inopportune possible timing, the release of Epstein Files. So I was like offline for around like 4 days or something, and everybody thought, oh my God, Tracey must have been exposed as having been on the Epstein list or in the Epstein Files. So people were actually searching my name in the DOJ search bar on the website, and sure enough, there were 2 results that come back with Michael Tracey, and it happens to be just like the FBI Communications Department's daily news roundup where they just summarize articles. So I had 2 articles from like 2018 and 2021 or something on totally different topics, but people thought that they had nailed me for that. So that was pretty
You want to know
funny.
something crazy?
Yeah.
You know who wasn't in the Epstein Files at all?
Who?
Kamala Harris.
She's not, there's no reference whatsoever?
Probably not.
I bet you there is. Because like,
you know why I'm saying probably not actually? Because I bet if there was, I bet I would know about it because people would be talking about it all the time.
There's a reference to everything. There's millions and millions of files.
I know, but she's still not in there. They avoided
news
it.
Articles and stuff.
You know who's definitely not in there? Hunter Biden, because I feel like I would have heard about that too. Look at that.
Did you have commenters demanding that you comment on like the emails that contain references to pizza and stuff?
Yeah, of course. People want me to talk about it, but a lot of it's just very boring to me.
No, but what do you make of this? Because like you're in the streaming world. Because like this is like a bonanza for people in the online media on YouTube, millions upon millions.
I
of
just
views
take
TikTok.
huge hits for all of it. Like I also
Really?
I hate covering like breaking news. I hate breaking news so much. But obviously these are your huge events. But it's like whatever happens, like I'll know tomorrow for sure what happened, and there's no reason to speculate right now whether it was like who shot the missile and who blew up the school of 176 little schoolgirls or whatever. Like I don't know what the answer is, but I know I'll know tomorrow, and I know that whatever I guess today is literally completely totally inconsequential to everything else. So why cover it? But that's just me. I just don't like it personally. But yeah, I know there's a lot of views to covering this stuff.
I mean, it will never not be amazing to me that the first week after the Epstein Files' biggest tranche was released, you had it as like this immediate consensus across all sectors of online media, including places like Breaking Points, where I've been an occasional guest, and places that are at least purport to be a little bit more journalistically reputable.
Whatever that means now.
They thought, okay.
Breaking Points was hosting this fucking Zhang guy who...
I know. I put it that guy's
fucking
amazing.
Christ.
Tucker just had him on too.
Everybody's having him on now.
Yeah.
Was he on Joe Rogan yet? There was a couple other big people. Yeah, of course. It's always in the Joe Rogan sphere. Yeah.
But like, everybody coalesced around this conviction that the best way that we can tell our followers and viewers and subscribers about what's going on with this latest release of Epstein Files is to literally type in pizza, find some decontextualized snippets of emails, and they probably didn't even search it themselves. They probably just saw whatever had floated to the top of the algorithm on X or whatever. And like that's the best research methodology for us to report back to the general public about what is most pertinent to know about the Epstein Files. Like I have my own like maybe a little bit more minoritarian research methodology where I wanted to like find particular prosecution memos, or there's actually a lot of interesting revelatory stuff in the Epstein Files if you want to know like how the
not
FBI
pedophile
works.
Sex ring stuff, but just
No,
like in terms
but,
of communication and who's talking to who. Like Ben, like I thought Ben's association with Epstein, that was very interesting to me.
That was amazing.
But
yes.
like people just want the pedophile.
About that for the first time.
People doesn't want the pedophile sex ring stuff, otherwise they don't.
No, but like in terms of like the machinations of how the FBI and the DOJ puts together a prosecution like this, which is a very high profile. I mean, a lot of the interesting stuff that I was looking for actually was dispelling the common mythology around what people just assume to be.
What a pointless endeavor.
Yeah, I know, exactly. But like across the media, streamers, YouTubers, everybody, they all, every social media personality, like, okay, what should we hone in on here? Pizza. That to me was like kind of a turning point. Not that I already wasn't extremely disenchanted and in fact very aggressively like adversarial towards a lot of this new media ecosystem, but like that was a turning point to me. I'm going to put it in a time capsule and just say, okay, this is what people thought that they would be most informative to transmit out to the public in terms of what they should take away as the key findings from the Epstein files. Just seemingly odd references to pizza from emails in 2013. Meanwhile, like if you actually do search for pizza, which I did because I talked to the Pizzagate guy this past week, like you can actually find like receipts for pizza orders attached to some of these emails that people seem to find so incendiary. And it's just so, like, I hate to use this term because I know people were offended by it, but like Trump coming into office told us that or his supporters said that we're not allowed to use it. It really is like conspiratardation to a degree that is just almost like unprecedented, at least in terms of my adult life experience, in terms of like what everybody just agreed was the most prudent course journalistically in order to report on this story. So I don't know. It's just, I will never cease to be amazed by it.
Yeah. I mean, if one side is covering it and they're getting a lot of views, like there's going to be a lot of pressure from everybody else to cover it. I mean, you saw, I don't know if you've ever followed like the, with Trump's whole big lie for the 2020 mail-in voter fraud and all that. Did you ever see the what got published? It was like 90 slides from the Dominion v. Fox News lawsuit or whatever. Like there was a ton of pressure inside Fox News. Like every time they talked about bringing on any of these fucking lunatics, Sidney Powell or Giuliani or any of these crazy people, it was always in reference to who's the big owner guy for Fox? Murdoch? No.
Murdoch, yeah.
Yes, Murdoch. Is that, yes. And he's like saying...
News Corp.
Yeah.
I think there's a guy, I think you might be referring to the guy who was in charge of Fox, which is like a subsidiary of News Corp.
Yeah. I feel like I'm not thinking of Murdoch. No, Rupert Murdoch. It is. I am thinking Murdoch.
Right? It might be Lachlan.
It's Murdoch. It's Murdoch is in emails and they're like talking to each other. Like Newsmax is killing us. Like these people are gaining like so many viewers. Like they are cannibalizing our audience, and this is like a huge concern for them as they're doing the news coverage.
By the way, like, post 2020 election, that was another period where I was denounced as being afflicted with TDS, just hating Trump, and that's my only goal in life is just to vindicate my hatred of Donald Trump because like. The 2020 election fraud theories just did not hold up to scrutiny. Like I did a cover story for the New York Daily News one week where I went through methodically went through some of the claims around how like supposedly the turnout in Philadelphia and Detroit and Atlanta and Milwaukee were inherently suspicious, but then if like you compare them to other metro areas, they're actually pretty consistent across the board. So there's just a million people were.
A lot of these claims were literally debunked within like 12 hours. Like there was a big one about Pennsylvania, about how more people voted than had been registered to vote, and this claim came from a guy who was looking at a database 2 years earlier that had to do with like people that were registered for a primary instead of like the actual voter turnout. And like a guy had found this in hours and a tweet back at him. But that Pennsylvania lie carried through all the way to the ellipse speech on January 6th, or the thing about the. It was Fulton County with the State Farm Arena, right? And the broken pipe.
On election day.
Yeah, and they lied about all of that. Like those were just lies that were debunked by within 12 hours by the Raffensperger was the secretary,
Raffensperger, the Secretary of State in Georgia.
And that he did a video like within 12 hours, and that lie carried through. It actually still carries through to today, but it was repeated on January 6th of the election.
It just goes to show that like so all the Trump adjacent people or the Trump supporting people who would have loved what I was doing on Russiagate because it incidentally seemed to exonerate Trump on some level could just easily swing on a moment's notice to despise me after the 2020 election, which is why I can never kind of consciously determine what it is that I'm going to focus on journalistically by reference to any kind of partisan framing because I think that's just a fool's errand, and you're never going to make everybody happy.
Well, no, that's why usually people just stick to one side. Like there are tons of people that watch me when I was friendlier towards conservatives a couple years ago. The comments that I would always see when I'm on conservative podcasts are Destiny's actually really smart sometimes, but when he talks about Trump, he's got TDS. So when I see a comment like that, what they're hearing is when I'm willing to say there are people on the left that are crazy, they're like, oh, this guy's spitting fact. But then if I criticize their side at all, it's like, oh, he's a fucking sellout, retard, idiot, TDS. And people will do that with every political issue ever. So if you have a mixed bag of political issues, the things that align with them, they'll say, oh, this guy's brilliant. I love his thought process. He's really cool. And then when you go over here, like, oh, but he's still deranged and deluded on this stuff. Not even like, well, maybe he's got points over here that I consider, but I disagree. But like, he's deranged and deluded here, but he's super smart and has a great thought process here. That's just how it goes right now, especially.
Yeah, and you're doing a different thing where, I mean, you are, I think, honest in saying that your sort of aim or one of your main aims in having your public profile is to support the Democrats or to maybe
right now,
tell the Democrats like what their best arguments are, like what are the best arguments that Democrats can capitalize on against the Republicans and Trump, et cetera. So like that's a perfectly intelligible and I guess defensible aim if that's what your actual partisan belief is. But people sometimes think that I'm being sneaky or cagey when I declare that I actually am not guided by any particular partisan motive, because I'm sincerely not, and I can give like a million examples of like the pendulum swinging back and forth between like when various factions hate me, and it's just incidental, right? Because like if I think that it's journalistically necessary to explain why it is that some of these crazed theories around the 2020 election are worth dispelling, that I'm going to do that, even if you like a year before would have liked what I was saying about Russiagate, or maybe you liked, or you liked 6 months before that, where I was like a little bit skeptical of some of the George Floyd protest excesses and some of the ideology that was spawned from that. But then, we fast forward, and then all these people are on a rampage against me because I'm saying this RFK Jr., Tulsi Gabbard, Elon Musk narrative about Trump being this Avenger Squad hero against the deep state. That's just nonsense. So at a certain point, at least in my experience, you got to just accept that you're always going to kind of swing back and forth between angering this or that faction, and you just kind of have to follow your journalistic intuitions.
Who are other journalist people that you respect or that you think also operate in a similar manner?
Well,
it could be mainstream, alternative, Twitter posters, whoever.
So I was asked recently to become the new podcast partner of Matt Taibbi.
Oh, God.
So I have a long-standing respect for Matt Taibbi. I definitely
there's another guy that I hate with all my fiery heart.
I definitely had some misgivings about some of the stuff that he's done in recent years, and I think now he's kind of almost even accepted that some of the approach to Trump in 2024 wasn't great.
Okay.
I will always like Glenn Greenwald. I mean, he's a personal friend of mine as well.
Another guy I super hate. Yeah,
I'm sure.
Oh, man.
I'm sure. But we fight behind the scenes about a lot of stuff too, and still about Trump. And yeah, there are some more. There's some good mainstream reporters too that I would have it's not quite as overtly political in terms of how I would align with them or something. But I think.
For somebody
Ken
like
Vogel at the New York Times does a lot of good stuff. That's one, and there are others. Let's see who else.
I'm curious for somebody.
There's nobody really on Epstein. Like I'm on a raft in the middle of the ocean on that.
Hanania?
Yeah, I think he's still not quite sure if he actually considers himself a journalist or not. I think he's done journalistically oriented things. It's funny.
Oh, well, nowadays, if Nick Shirley considers himself a journalist, then I think we can all be.
It was funny. Like in September, we were at this Epstein survivors press conference. I don't know if you remember that, where like this woman comes up and says, "We're going to make our own client list if the government."
Oh, I think I remember this, and they were getting a bunch of civil litigants together.
It was in front of the Capitol, but Thomas Massie at that point didn't want to talk to me anymore because he was like angry at me. So I kind of deputized Hanania to go do like a journalistic task on my behalf to like ask Massey some questions and get his answers. So I guess I forced Hanania into some journalistic activity. I get along with him. I'm friendly with him. We do streams and stuff together.
Can I say I'm curious? I'm putting you on the spot a little bit here. What was the last good piece of reporting that you feel like Taibbi did?
Last good piece of reporting that I feel like Taibbi did. Let's see. I mean, he's had some good stuff. He had a series. We had an article recently having to do with the Labour Party in the UK. I'm not going to be able to summarize it well, but
sure.
he's done good stuff.
Okay. Okay.
I'm now stammering because I'm not going to be able to summarize it well. But there was something that was
Because he's
pretty
a
good.
dog shit reporter who does
that's
dog
not
shit
true.
work.
That's not true. He's
Free
done a lot of
PR
good
for
stuff.
Elon Musk. Absolutely.
I'll still defend the Twitter files. I mean, I think that was perfectly justifiable journalistic practice on his part.
I think the concept of the new owner.
If you're not journalistically interested in the behind-the-scenes conniving between major social media companies and the security state apparatus.
Oh, that would be really interesting.
That's what the Twitter files was fundamentally
No, the
about.
Twitter files was a guy who had a personal hatred for the last CEO, bought a new company, and then brought in a bunch of journalists to talk to his engineers to see stuff that he exposed to them to write articles to hit pieces about it.
And the other journalists that he
100%.
brought on, they were given free reign to search through the archive.
They were
on their
given,
own.
first of all, you have no idea how much of the archive they could search through. None of us do. Only Elon
I
and his
do.
employees do. You don't know what exists. You don't own Twitter. You're trusting that Elon, there is an implicit trust there that Elon is providing everything that would need to be provided to them to do all the digging that they need to do. Number one. And number two,
is that,
the access they had was talking to guys that were working at Twitter who were searching through stuff for him or making stuff available
All
to
I know
them.
is that Matt Taibbi, Li Fong, he's another one. He's another journalist that I would say I respect. He does a lot of good stuff.
Okay.
He was brought on with Taibbi to do the Twitter files research. They went to the office in San Francisco.
Yep.
And they had basically, according to them, and I trust them, they had unfettered ability to search through the materials that were presented to them. Does that mean that like literally everything was provided? I don't know. I'm just saying that what was available to them, they had
I'm just saying in
ability
any
to search through.
in any other circumstance, I think that people would have looked at that story a lot differently. Where the new wealthiest man in the world who just bought a company who had personal hatred for the last owner of this company on a platform that was bullying him, bought the new company and brought in a bunch of journalists to write hit pieces about the old owner.
Well, Elon didn't even hate Jack Dorsey. Jack Dorsey supported Elon taking the company over.
It might at some point. I think it transitioned because Jack got weird or whatever. But Elon was deeply personally bullied by a lot of people on Twitter, and everything related to because Twitter was back at the time. People might have forgotten this, but Twitter was considered a somewhat like woke-ish platform.
Yeah, it was.
Right. And Elon's whole political
there was
identity.
A lot of convoluted speech regulation going on around like dead naming trans. And all that
Sure.
kind of
Yeah.
stuff.
And people get real. Oh, and the trans stuff is animating 51% of the Republican heart, okay, and has been for the past 10 years or whatever. But I'm just saying
it went beyond that. I mean, it went
Sure.
beyond just the trans stuff. Like,
okay,
there was always
I'm
like
just
very
saying- I'm just
convoluted
saying-
speech codes that they were debuting.
I'm just saying that if a billionaire bought a company, let's say me and Jeff Bezos start fighting a ton, and then let's say tomorrow I buy the Washington Post and I bring on new reporters to write about how horrible the Washington Post used to be under the old ownership, who happens to be a guy that I had huge beef with and a publication that was like writing a bunch of bad things about me, everybody would look at that and go, okay, bro, you brought in journalists to do hit pieces on the old owners that you now control the access of information they have about them, right? That's like a crazy set of circumstances, regardless if the reporting was good or bad. Like just the start of that is kind of crazy, right? But it's kind of crazy, right?
Irrespective of whatever Elon Musk's motives were, right? We still had a bunch of unimpeachable, verified primary source material that chronicled the surreptitious coordinations that were going on between a major social media company and aspects of the national security state.
Sure, but I mean, like, I feel like
you could read the primary source documentation. You don't have to take Matt Taibbi or Li Fang or anybody else's word for it. And to me, it was a very illuminating window into how that stuff works.
Yeah, but I would say the vast majority of the people that even bring up the Twitter files never even read them or engaged with them at all.
Did. I mean,
so,
a lot of people are dumb. I'm not going to dispute that.
Sure, no, I know. But like, it's not like I see Taibbi or these people fight against these interpretations a lot. But like, one of the things that stood out to me a lot when Taibbi was reporting about like Twitter's coordination with the federal government, like the two big takeaways that people never seem to get from this, because they've never read the Twitter files, is that one, Twitter, generally speaking, didn't cooperate with the federal government. There were a lot of huge lists that were sent for banning people, whatever, that they ignored. And then two was that
there was one email where Adam Schiff, when he was a congressman, tried to contact somebody at Twitter to ban a bunch of accounts, and it seemed like they didn't take action on
Sure,
it.
they were like these might be Chinese accounts.
But I would still like to know that Adam Schiff or his office were trying to get that done.
That's
right?
fine, and you can know that. That's okay. And but then two, like one of the largest talking points had to do with that laptop story, and Taibbi's like claims on that were that there was zero involvement between the FBI and Twitter relating to that story. And I remember his specific tweet. He said there was no back and forth between the FBI and Twitter for this story, and that might have even been the problem. There was literally no communication occasionally, but most people will say like, oh, well, we saw in the Twitter files that people like the FBI were lying about the laptop story and stuff like that. And then all the emails that you do read about Twitter, figuring out like around the laptop story, especially around what to censor and what not to censor, none of it to me looked like we're evil people and we got to follow the government censorship. But like a lot of people who were genuinely in the wake of like Cambridge Analytica and everything else were trying to get things right and didn't really know like what the path forward was, and we're trying to figure it out.
There was a lot of overreach. I mean, Twitter
When you say overreach,
well, I mean, but Twitter did at the time, and this was like I think October of 2020, right? So it was not long before the election. They did ban links to a New York Post article on the Hunter Biden laptop. I'm not saying the Hunter Biden laptop story is the most monumental story in American political history. Sure. But I'm saying, I remember I tried testing it out myself, and you couldn't tweet the link or even send it in a DM
for less than 1 day.
Yeah, for less than 1 day. Yep. Okay, fine. So I would still like to know how that policy came about, and the Twitter files did shed light on what the thinking was behind that policy.
Less than 5% of people will know what you're talking about, though, because people will assume that the Twitter files confirmed that story was censored at the behest of the FBI, which was Trump's, by the way.
No, but I think, my memory is, I have to go refresh my memory on some of the granular details of it, but my memory was that the social media companies were kind of priming themselves, sometimes in concert with with some government agency, but almost on their own accord, to prove to the public and to their government regulators that they were not going to succumb to any kind of foreign interference campaign as they allegedly had in 2016.
Sure.
So they instituted all these policies that like went above and beyond in terms of potentially curtailing the distribution of certain materials that might be attributed to some foreign actor. And that's what happened with the Hunter Biden laptop story, which I'm sorry, again, I'm not saying it's the most momentous scandal in history again, but the material on that laptop was proven to be authentic. So
but we still don't know if that was a Russian planted story or not, though.
Whether
we don't
or not
know.
It was.
But what I'm saying is, sure, but it would dramatically
just like
change.
The John Podesta emails were all authentic, even if arguably or allegedly they could have been disseminated as a result of some actor connected.
But that's
with the
that would be one of the most important parts of the story, right? Is knowing who disseminated that information. Because selective transparency.
It's important. It'll be interesting to know.
No, not interesting to know. It's a crucial, fundamentally crucial, one of the most important parts of the story.
But it wouldn't change one way or another the authenticity of the materials.
No, but it would give you. I think that it would change a lot. Let's say that it came out that you really did kill a dog when you were 22 out of anger, right? Let's say that
I have not. I disavow.
Let's say 50 accounts on Twitter are posting that, right? I'm looking at you and I'm like, okay, that dog killer, that's bad. And let's say they have proof of it. It's like, okay, let's say that there was a new law that was put into place that says that you now have to know the country of origin of everybody that's tweeting a thing. Let's say that I see that 48 of those 50 Twitter accounts are posting from Russia. Now, I would know the fact about you, but it would change the lens through which I perceive that information. Because now, rather than seeing that you're a dog beater, now what I'd be thinking is, okay, Russia really wants me to know that this guy is a dog beater. Why? It would change dramatically how I would perceive the information in our landscape.
But journalists have acquired information, and therefore the public has acquired information.
Journalists have acquired information from Giuliani.
From a whole host
from
of
Giuliani,
sleazy,
who passed it to the New York Post.
Or even criminal sources who maybe initially obtained the information through the dodgiest possible means that you could imagine, and that is interesting in terms of how the information got acquired.
Yep.
But I think you have to kind of separate that from the
authenticity
authenticity or lack thereof of the information.
It's inseparable.
Itself. How?
Because who is publishing it tells you a lot about why you're reading what you're reading, right? Like there's a ton of information you could read about.
But it doesn't change the authenticity of the actual material.
No, but nothing. You don't perceive anything in a vacuum, right?
No.
Like if you're getting leaks from, like the fact that somebody, when Putin is speaking, right? Oftentimes he's speaking, it's political propaganda, it's a lie, right? Or sometimes it'll be a lie. Or when leaders of countries are speaking, it's a lie, right? But that doesn't mean that just because something is a lie, doesn't mean that it's arbitrary or that it's random, right? The lies that they're speaking for a very particular purpose, and it's good to know why they're saying the things that they're saying, right?
But how about this? So in the Podesta emails, right, this was in the 2016 election, one of the things that was unearthed in those emails was the transcripts of speeches that Hillary Clinton gave to Goldman Sachs